Dr. Franklin? No, get in the hot seat. What up,
You're on, so I would say welcome to.
Good afternoon. Not on.
Yeah.
Testing. Not on.
He's on. He's on. Okay, you're on.
Good afternoon. I want to thank everyone for the joint meeting of the Minority Caucus and Budget and Finance meeting. They can't hear me.
Well,
So I'm not on. They can't hear. They can't.
I think they can. Oh, you can?
Yeah, can't hear.
Here, now try that.
Try it. Good afternoon. Can you hear me in the background? Okay. Thank you. Welcome to the joint committee meeting of the Minority Caucus and Budget and Financing. Let's turn it up louder. Yeah. Is there a way to turn the volume?
Volume control.
All right. Okay, let's yell. Can you hear me now? No endorsement there, but can you hear me? Thank you. Okay. I'd like the panel to do a 20-second introduction of yourself up front here, what organizations you're with, and then we can proceed with the presentation. Everyone knows we're here for the Community Oversight Committee, and I just want to thank my fellow council members from Budget and Financing and the Minority Caucus members. Also, I thank Chairman Cooper and our Vice Chair Lady Sharon Hurt for being here. And we can start with to the right to Mr. Caldwell. Could you please introduce yourself?
My name is Keith Caldwell, and I'm with the Urban Epicenter and also with Democracy Nashville.
Jackie Sims, I'm also with Democracy Nashville.
Hi, I'm Sekou Franklin. I'm with Democracy Nashville.
Dr. Franklin, you could start whenever you're ready, sir.
I want to welcome everyone here this afternoon. A special thank you to Council Lady Sharon Hurt and Councilman Scott Davis for making it possible for us to come before you this afternoon. And what we're hoping today to press upon you the importance of a community oversight board. This is especially important for residents in Davidson County who are people of color. So we hope that you will listen attentively and feel free at the conclusion of our presentation to engage with us in questions. Thank you.
Greetings. I also want to thank Councilman Scott Davis as well as Council Lady Sharon Hurt for sponsoring this along with the Budget and Finance Committee. I want to recognize also Representative Brenda Gilmore, who's a strong supporter of our efforts as well. Just want to give you an idea, the Community Oversight Now group or coalition is comprised of 10 groups, just a rough synopsis. The Justice for Jacquees Coalition that was formed in the aftermath of the Jacquees Clemens killing. NOAA, which has many representatives here today. Gideon's Army, which authored the Driving While Black report. Black Lives Matter, which called for an oversight board as much as 2 years ago. Democracy Nashville and Democratic Communities, Urban Epicenter, Nashville Peacemakers, the Nashville NAACP, as well as the Music City Writers Union. Other information, an oversight board was first endorsed in Nashville 20 years ago by the NAACP. Currently, this oversight board effort has been endorsed by the IMF, that's the Interdenominational Ministerial Fellowship, the Tennessee State Conference of NAACP, the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. It's a national organization that has provided consultation for us. And the ACLU of Tennessee has also endorsed this particular oversight board. Furthermore, some more information, Phyllis Hildreth, the academic director of the Institute for Conflict Management, Beverly Watts, who's executive director of the Tennessee Human Rights Commission, along with Dr. Amy Steele of the Truth and Reconciliation Project, and Dr. Paul Spear Vanderbilt University. They have also offered early advice and recommendations on the proposed Community Oversight Board. What I'll say in general about an oversight board, it's not a new concept. The first proposal came out decades ago, and you'll hear more about our particular proposal that we want to bring to you. But having said all that, I want to really emphasize that this is a proposal that is deeply rooted in the civil rights community. It's one of the central fabrics of police reform, sponsored by civil rights groups. In 1964, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. endorsed an independent civilian review board for New York City. That proposal in particular came out of the Harlem Unity Council. 2 years later, as part of the Chicago Freedom Movement, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. endorsed the creation of a Citizens Review Board, which is the same thing as an oversight board, that would document or at least challenge police brutality, false arrests, stops, and seizures. So this idea of an oversight board, although it may be new to Nashville, is deeply rooted in the basic fabric of the civil rights movement. So if one were to argue that they support voting rights, the Voting Rights Act, the 64 Civil Rights Act, the Open Housing Act, rights for LGBT activist folks, rights for people who are disabled, then one also has to recognize that this oversight board is deeply rooted and shaped as part of the civil rights movement. What we did in this document, we also gave you some examples in which an oversight board has been used effectively. More recently, it was used to at least address the arrest of the Atlanta Hawks basketball player Thabo Sefolosho. It's been used in Charlotte, North Carolina, San Francisco. Right now, I believe there are about 100 plus cities in this country that have a civilian review board, a community oversight board. In addition, I want to point out that the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing, sponsored by President Barack Obama, and the lead advocate for that was Chief Ramsey, the former police chief of Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia. They also recommended strong civilian oversight, particularly in the form of a civilian review board that should work hand in glove in cities. And also I want to emphasize that Jacquees Clemens, his mother and aunt, have also endorsed the Community Oversight Board and provided testimony, which we provided in this handout.
So I just want to talk just a moment, why it's important to have a community oversight board. I grew up in public housing here in Nashville, both John Henry Hale and Preston Taylor. I currently own a home in North Nashville, right off 10th and Jefferson. Just less than a year ago, I had walked down to the farmer's market to get some Jamaican food. On my way back, I got pulled over by the police at about 9th and Jefferson. I said, "What's the problem?" They said I looked like someone who had stolen something out of the Rite Aid store at the corner of Rosa Parks and 8th. I said, "So do you have a description of the person?" They said, "No." Another police car comes. I'm here, by this time, I'm at the parking lot of Mary's Barbecue Pit, right? I said, "Well, what's the description?" It's a black man, right? And so I said, "So you're on Jefferson. I think mostly it's populated with black men. Do you have anything beyond that?" A third police car comes up. The lady who works in the store says, "That's not him." So I've been detained. I asked, am I under arrest? And for about 30 minutes, and then to some surprise, "Well, it's not you, and you can go." So this kind of racial profiling, we see it's pervasive. I've been stopped many times at any stop sign to say I did a rolling stop. We know our areas have become militarized rather than being policed. And it's important that we have a police department that is transparent and that is accountable to the community. And the ways that I can't imagine why the police department or city officials wouldn't want transparency and sunlight in a police department. And if you don't have transparency, you effectively have the fox guarding the hen house. And so I don't think it's possible for people to police themselves in any significant and meaningful way, no matter how well-intentioned they may be, without the sunlight of transparency showing in. So I wanted to come here today to show my full support of a community oversight board that holds our police department and thereby our city accountable for the way it polices our communities. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll offer concluding comments to this panel, and I'm not sure how many council members have actually had to deal with police community interaction, but for a lot of folks in Nashville, myself included, it's routinized or normalized as part of your daily life. In my case, I've actually filed 2 complaints against the police department. The last complaint I filed was a consequence of an officer coming into my yard at really about 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night. It was the second time it happened in a span of 6 months. In both occasions, when the officer came into my property, the officer ordered me back into my own house. This is a young officer. Both of them were young, in fact, probably in their 20s, telling me, who's had a life experiences, that I had basically no right to even ask questions. The second time it happened, fortunately, there was a senior officer on the scene. This is on Saturday night, late at night. There was a senior officer on the scene who fortunately intervened and asked for the officer to kind of stand down. I did file a complaint with OPA, and it was the second time I've done this. In terms of this complaint that I filed with OPA, Office of Personal Accountability, I got a response back from OPA. When I opened up the letter, it was addressed to my house, but when I opened the letter was addressed to the wrong person. It was addressed to another gentleman in another part of the city. They basically got the letters confused. And that gives you an idea of how dysfunctional this process is. That gives you an idea of the kind of anger, sometimes shame that people face when they have to deal with police community interactions that typically get unresolved. And so, anybody?
That's it? Yep. Okay. Thank you for your time.
All right, so we're going to take you guys just through a little bit of
Just,
data to help.
Excuse me. Briefly introduce yourself, gentlemen.
So my name is Kyle Mothershead. I'm the chair of the policing committee with Nashville Organized for Action and Hope. I'm also a civil rights and criminal defense lawyer.
My name is Bob Johnson. I'm with Nashville Organized for Action and Hope.
And I'm Arnold Hayes, also with Nashville, with NOAA.
Can I get the clicker? Thank you. All right, if you can just take a look at the screen. So this first page is essentially a lament by one of our Supreme Court justices, Sonia Sotomayor. It was written last year in a dissent to yet another federal court opinion stripping away our rights and allowing law enforcement to basically do whatever they want to us. And she's just saying, you know, we are closer and closer to living in a police state here. And this is one of our Supreme Court justices put us in a published opinion. And so we just need to realize the legal environment that we're operating in which law enforcement has an enormous amount of latitude to do as it will. Is that better? Great, thanks. All right, so race discrimination in law enforcement is a nationwide problem, and this is just one of bazillions of articles in the Washington Post and elsewhere documenting this, where we have in traffic stops and pedestrian stops, we have race discrimination with people of color being stopped more, searched more, but with what's called the hit rate of the success rate of these searches being higher against white people. And of course, the Driving While Black report broke last fall. There wasn't a lot in it. It was a 200-page report. I just want to focus a little bit more on these roadside searches, because that's where the question of race discrimination is extremely clean and easy. It's much murkier when we're talking about stops. But if you're looking at roadside searches, you can look at the hit rate and see if there's race discrimination. And here, this is our police department last year. And this data, just for your information, was produced by the police department. This is their analysis in response to your ordinance, the council's ordinance requiring these reports. And so we can just see that last year there was a very significant gap between the hit rate for when officers are searching black male drivers and white male drivers. And what that means is that when an officer is making a subjective determination of, do I have probable cause to believe that this person is a criminal that has some sort of contraband, there is a gap, a subjective gap, where skin color is becoming an indicator of criminality. And when we did Driving While Black, we looked at that gap, and it actually quite frankly, has been growing for the last 5 years. It was actually, for all his faults, with Chief Serpis, it was a much narrower gap in those days, and it has been a growing gap. If we look at female drivers, we see exactly the same color gap. The numbers are a little different. You look at 40% hit rate against black female drivers. That means when officers subjectively are saying to themselves, I believe this person's a criminal and has some kind of evidence of crime, they're wrong most of the time when it comes to black female drivers. Now, with that frame of reference in mind, which, just mind you, the Department of Justice and other academic experts have said that hit rate stat is to be looked at. It's in the Ferguson DOJ report. It's in federal court opinions that this is a metric of race discrimination. You can infer implicit or explicit bias from that kind of hit rate statistical disparity. But then we look at, okay, so we know that judgment is less accurate against drivers of color. Well, how often are people getting searched? And here we see this enormous disparity where drivers of color are getting searched 4 times the rate as white drivers, or 2.5 times the rate if we're talking about women. And so, there was so much noise around, and battling between the police and the, Gideon team about driving while black. The police department really never responded to this stuff. The roadside search disparities got lost in this dialogue, and there really is no defense. There is no defense. It is totally clear that we have a race discrimination problem. So that's one issue that the COB would address. The other is accountability for misconduct. Okay, this is also a nationwide problem. This is not unique to Nashville in any way, but you can see from these quotes. One's from an academic, and one's from one of our own fellow Nashvillians. The bottom line, the problem with these systems is that officer credibility is always assumed and citizen credibility is always assumed to be not there. And so in any kind of contest, whose word wins, it's always the officer's word, and so complaints always get dismissed. These are, statistically speaking, sustained rates of excessive force complaints. You can look, the nationwide average is poor, all right? That comes from a Bureau of Justice Statistics study from about 15 years ago. 8%, not very good. That means they're sustaining 8% of the complaints that come in from citizens for excessive force. Poor, but certainly better than New Orleans, Newark, Cleveland, and definitely Nashville. So those middle 3 come from some journalism, an article in Huffington Post a couple of years. Nashville, that is an analysis done of 10 years worth of data, 2005 to 2015, which Metro produced to me and which I had analyzed by a data analyst. We got all the complaints for that 10-year period, and literally 0% of citizen-initiated excessive force complaints were sustained by our police department, according to what the analyst report showed. And so not to say that there have been some excessive force complaints that supervisors have initiated. There have been some. But we're talking about if it comes from the outside, if a person off the street says, this happened to me, 0. None over 10 years were sustained. And if we look a little bit more broadly at other categories of serious misconduct, obstruction of rights is the label that the police department uses for civil rights violations like false arrest. And we can see that those sustain rates are abysmally low. And, of course, there's no way for us to know what's the true percentage, what's the right percentage that it should be. Should it be 30%? Should it be 50%, 70%? Who knows? But 0% or 1% seems pretty far off the mark. And with that, I'll turn it over to Arnold.
And if you can also move the slides for me.
Oh, sure.
Okay. And what do we mean when we say Community Oversight Board? It's an agency staffed with civilians and not sworn officers charged with investigating community complaints of misconduct by police. And you may hear about different names. Some of the popular names are review boards, oversight board, police commissions, civilian investigative panels, but they really all mean the same thing. You're basically investigating allegations of misconduct against police. Next. And what type of conduct are we talking about when we say misconduct? It's things as abusive language, false arrest, harassment, excessive force, discrimination, or retaliation. And I do want to make one point here because I think some people may have the misconception that the COB is going to solve all crime in Nashville. It will not. It's focused on a certain area of complaints, and also hopefully it can have a bridge of where it can build trust between the community and law enforcement. And as was mentioned earlier, oversight boards have been around for a while, since the 1940s. As was mentioned, Dr. Martin Luther King called for a COB in 1964 and also in 1966. Most often, though, cities, they wait until something happens. Then they decide, okay, we're gonna get some type of board together to solve. But it would be so wonderful if cities would be a lot more proactive and actually start trying to solve these type problems ahead of time. And there have been different boards that some have been successful, some have not. But usually if they have the appropriate authority and also the funding, usually they're successful. Some of the best practices is usually boards that are staffed with civilians, not sworn officers. Again, adequate authority with an independent budget from the police department. The majority of the board nominated by civic organizations rather than the city. And usually reporting, because that's very important. There's some cities that they do annual reports, and they actually show this data where it's accessible to the community. And they also give community talks around the city to also, it's just transparency, and has the necessary authority to implement recommendations. So why does Nashville need a COB? Misconduct, police, addressed by the police, there's a definite conflict of interest with that. And to give you an example, I'm proud when I walk into restaurants and I see these inspection scores and this restaurant. I feel comfortable that I'm going in, I'm eating food that hasn't been actually eating in the food prep area. Our employees haven't washed their hands. Just think of a review board or something like that, when it comes to the police, we should not just leave it up to the restaurant. You don't leave it up to the restaurant to inspect themselves. We shouldn't leave it up to the police department to inspect themselves either. And this is a real problem. Again, this is MNPD data that basically says over a period of 10 years, there were 700 complaints. But when you look at abusive treatment and excessive force, 0. I know a number of people have a lot of confidence in our police department, but I don't know if they're that good, where it's 0 abusive treatment and excessive force. Okay.
So there's been a draft ordinance proposed that would line out and structure the Community Oversight Board. One of the things geared towards transparency and accountability that Mr. Caldwell spoke of, the board would be made up of 7 community members, 2 appointees or designees from the mayor's office, and then 2 appointees or designees from this general body. One of the things that is important that there be this kind of collective or shared power with the community holding its own self-interest or its own interest in its hands. We have some copies here of the legislative overview as a supplement to the slides here. So just briefly, it considers the community's organizations' recommendations for their own designees. The administrative duties becomes the next slide that we'll see here. So how is the COB composed? I mean, how is the COB composed? How is it made up? There's an executive assistant director. There will be folks, community. All right. An executive and assistant directors, community liaisons, legal counsels. These would be paid or folks staffed through the budget that is proposed. The COB members themselves would be unpaid volunteers, as it is currently proposed. How does the COB work? How would it actually go about doing its work? The community or the COB members would receive complaints, officer misconduct complaints. They would be given the authority, presumably by this body, to investigate and investigate fully without the interference of law enforcement, either the police department, sheriff's department, or the courts. They would be given ample authority to fully investigate issues or complaints from start to finish and render decisions based on their findings, up to and including suspension terminations that would be supported by the police department. How does this happen? The COB would get the evidence or receive the complaint. The Metro Police would be willing to cooperate or cooperate fully with any investigation. And then the board would decide or determine what action to take from that point forward. I think most of this is built in with the idea of transparency and accountability, with the idea that public safety is a concern where the COB falls in. How do we maintain the best interests of the public at large?
All right. Also, we were talking about different cities. Some of the cities. Yeah, let me go to that one instead.
Okay.
Some of the cities that we looked at is Atlanta, Austin, Denver, and also Memphis. And I'll look a little bit more in detail with Memphis in a few minutes, and also Newark. But if you look at these cities, a number of them, usually in excess of $1 million budget to actually be effective. And so far, Nashville it hasn't even started. But some of these have been in operation since, 2000. Memphis even started in 1994, and then they started back again in 2016. And we've heard a lot of conversations about, Memphis, their review board, but they started out as a voluntary board, and staff, there was really no significant budget, and they only had minimal authority. So I would say that Memphis is a pretty good example right now of why boards need to be funded and they need to have the appropriate authority. So if you look at what we're proposing for Nashville and what Memphis currently has, they've restarted. But right now we're proposing $1.8 million budget. Memphis only has a budget. The last I checked was $200,000. Their board size is similar, and actually we've changed from 13, and we're actually looking at an 11-member board now, just like Memphis. But the staff size, Nashville, you heard about the executive director and assistant and investigators. We're looking at a 15-person staff. Memphis only has 3. And in my opinion, one of the advantages of a COB, one of the strengths is really having independent investigators. We're proposing 5 investigators. Memphis only had 1. And misconceptions that these boards erode the authority of law enforcement, but actually it creates transparency and accountability. Also, that law enforcement can address allocations themselves. In Nashville, with the high number of complaints, 98% that were not sustained, says that there's definitely some room for improvement there. Another item that's been brought up is that lack of education or experience to properly evaluate police practices. But we have council members. They're not required to be attorneys. We have members of the school board that do not have to be teachers. We have jurors that do not have to have experience as judges. And as long as they're given the information, they do have an excellent chance of actually trying to make a good decision. We just have to have the information. The people in Nashville deserve to live in dignity and safety in their communities. A community oversight board is one way to ensure that the civil rights of all people of Nashville are protected. And for even those that think this is something Nashville should not be doing, my question is, what is your solution? We do have problems with allegations of police misconduct, and also we have some opportunities for policy review. And even if you're not affected, there are people in Nashville, your brothers and sisters, that are being affected. And now I think we're to the question and answer period.
All right, we will start with members of the Minority Caucus and Budget and Financing Committee. I see first one, Councilman Glover.
So I'm not going to be, am I there? All right. So I'm not going to be popular with the question I'm going to ask you. But here is my question. We want to throw more money at every issue that seems to be brought to us. And I was on the school board, and I'm now on the council. The problem we have in our country is not a lack of funding. It's a problem of lack of family, in my opinion. And so when we're sitting here talking about creating 13 new jobs, $1.8 million of a budget, do you realize how much money we spent out of our reserve funds this year just to keep our city operating? $72 million we took out of our savings account to keep moving forward. So I'm not angry. I'm simply saying, when do we balance things? Where do we make it balance? Because we can't keep funding at the level we've been funding. We don't have the resources.
I understand, and I think I asked the same question. Where was Josh Lippard's parents when he was making the decisions? And I often sometimes think that wraparound services and things that can be provided, or things that are not provided in certain neighborhoods to certain folks, put us at disadvantages. So the question of throwing money, let's maybe reorient that in terms of investing with the idea of public safety in mind, because I am just like you, sir. If Josh Lippard's parents had maybe treated him a little bit differently, he wouldn't have gotten the suspensions that he got, and those things would have been addressed even before he was able to kill Jaquez Clemens.
Well, I would say this. I'm certainly no saint by any step of the imagination. However, and so let me just say this, because while I'm making people mad, let's just go all the way. If I organized a march that said 100 white men, I'd be written up tomorrow. We're not treating each other as equals, and I get your point. I get the point, but for some reason we don't figure out how to get in the middle, and I wish we could, because Mr. Chair, and I'll close with this, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, have I ever not treated you as an equal?
I would like to just respond briefly. So,
Okay.
permission of the chair.
No problem.
Do you mind if I say something?
No, you're fine. Or go ahead and respond to them.
So I want to make clear that, even though police misconduct does disproportionately affect people of color, this is actually a totally universal issue, and there are lots of white people who have been victimized by police misconduct, and they've had their complaints not sustained, just like people of color's complaints are not sustained. And so this really is for all of us, and that's why we talked about Justice Sotomayor. I mean, the courts have allowed the police to do what they will, and that affects our entire society. It diminishes all of our freedoms, and it is up to all of us to reestablish constitutional democracy in this country by getting law enforcement in hand.
All right. Councilman, Dr. Franklin, your mic's live.
Yeah, I want to address that question if I can. What a civilian review board does, it serves as an honest broker, actually. I think there's a misconception between the police and the community. There are times in which a black officer may mistreat another person, and the civilian review board can offer a remedy to that. If you've traveled around the country, I've lived all over the country, you find that police misconduct has a kind of cross-racial lens, if I can say that. Number two, I want to say that the Civilian Review Board actually doesn't fund 15 people. There's a staff that's paid, and there's a voluntary board of 11 to 13 members. And the number of $1.2, $1.3 million is actually quite a low number and possibly even less than comparable cities. The third thing I'll say is that I'm sure that you probably follow Chicago and you probably followed other cities. In most of those cities, when it comes to police shootings, you find that in many cases, the victims who are shot, they're not able to bring cases. The grand juries, the DAs decide not to indict. What's not known, and Chicago is the best example, is that in many of those cases, the city is forced to fork out funds. So if you go back and look at Chicago, over a 10-year period of time, 95% plus of police complaints have been decided against the people who brought those complaints. But if you go back and look at the Chicago City Council and look at how much money they approved to those same people who brought complaints, the number is quite high. So why am I saying that? Because the Civilian Review Board can actually be a cost-efficient, fiscally sound initiative to mediate various complaints and to possibly stop civil or civil lawsuits from moving forward. And how do we know that? It's because we have evidence of that. We have concrete evidence of city after city after city in which 95% of the citizen complaints have been decided against the citizens. But in those exact same cities, we have concrete evidence that lawmakers, city councils, have actually forked out money to those same citizens. So a Civilian Review Board could perhaps serve as a stopgap, right, and it potentially be a fiscally sound measure, right, that can solve complaints, and at the same time, by solving complaints, they could potentially stop, in many cases, these lawsuits from moving forward if they offer effective remedies.
Thank you. Councilman Nick Leonardo.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'd like to also thank the members of NOAA and everyone for being here today and putting on this presentation and all the work you guys have continued to do to keep this issue relevant. And I talked to Mr. Mothershead beforehand, and I thought it was important to point out, too, that this is looking at everything that goes on as far as the policing, not just shootings and the like. But when I was looking at your legislative overview, a couple of things, I guess a couple of questions here. The first is that in order for this to work out, you've got to have the access to the information. And so OPA can't, they have to cooperate with us. But obviously, you know that there's a Senate bill that passed at the General Assembly in May that said that they don't have to turn over any kind of evidence, the state doesn't, while the investigation is pending until it's over with. And so that's another issue. But it also says at the bottom, too, that the board is authorized to compel the appearance of witnesses in the production of evidence. And so I guess it's kind of sort of the same question hand in hand. How are you going to get cooperation from the DA's office, the police department, and the like? And secondarily, how do you plan to compel the attendance of witnesses effectively?
So, as I think the council knows, so within the charter, the council is empowered to enact ordinances which the police department must comply with. The police department's policies have to comply with the council's ordinances. That's under the charter. And so we have proposed that as part of the implementing legislation, the police department would be required to comply with information requests by the COB and to submit to interviews, to turn over records related to these investigations. Essentially, the COB would be stepping into the shoes of the Office of Professional Accountability. The exact same things that the Office of Professional Accountability is currently doing in that regard, the COB would be doing. And so as a matter of law, the charter authorizes the council to require the police department to comply with those requests. So you don't need any kind of compulsion authority for that. It becomes police department policy to cooperate. The charter also authorizes the council and other metro agencies with investigative authority to seek a compulsion order from the Chancery Court. And so for that to come into play, and I've got the provisions if you guys want to see them, for that to come into play, it really only matters where we're talking about, like the Walmart surveillance video, some kind of third-party evidence that you can't otherwise get just from walking up and talking. And for that, basically we just need to apply to the Chancery Court, and the Chancery Court would issue the order, and then they would come. But that should be fairly rare because for the most part, most of these investigations are investigators going and talking to people, getting statements, making a record of those statements, and then getting police department records and having the officers submit to interviews. And so I don't think that there should be a problem with getting access to the information. As far as the new state law, in terms of the police shootings, I don't see that is a conflict at all. Most of the misconduct allegations we're talking about are not police shootings. There are about 700 a year citizen-initiated complaints for all wide-ranging conduct. And, to kind of adopt the sort of mentality of kind of the broken windows form of policing, I mean, when we let, courtesy and disrespect and race discrimination slide on these minor issues, it sets up an environment that says, you police can do basically whatever you want. And so we need to clamp down here on all of them so that citizens have a voice that means something and some accountability for the system. And so, shootings are terrible, but they are rare. And so the bulk of the work that the COB would be doing would be addressing, violations of the right against search and seizure or excessive force or perjury in a search warrant affidavit or in court or rudeness or racial profiling in a traffic stop. That's the bulk of what it would be addressing on the misconduct side.
Thank you. Council Lady Hurt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is, would the COB also be investigating the Office of Professional Accountability? Because obviously some of the issues that we have, I know my colleague spoke about balance. I truly believe in balance, and the disparities that you showed today and presented shows that there is great disparity and there needs to be more balance. So we need to have some accountability. So I just wonder if that is a possible thing. And I also know that Martin Luther King said that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Yep. So if I have not personally been a victim of injustice from one individual, if someone else who is like me has been, then I too have been injusted by that person, whether it was directly or indirectly. And my third thing I'd like to say is I had the privilege of serving with a great organization called CASA, a court-appointed special advocate that serves the community and the legal system for children who have been abused or neglected. And they basically assist the attorneys and the guardian ad litems and the parents who are unable to do all of the investigative work. So I see the COB being a great addition to what we already have, similar to that of a CASA that is within and it's a nationwide organization. It's not just a local, but it has been a very helpful addition to the legal system. And I think that this will serve in the same manner. And I thank you all so much for the work that you've done. I'm always just fascinated with the time and the effort that you all put to provide this amazing data that you provided.
Thank you. Is there
Councilor Vercher.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Try now.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, the Community Oversight Now and NOAA and others that's out in the audience too. I just have a couple of questions since you have the audience and public is viewing as well. Can anyone speak to what current initiatives your respective organizations, what you're currently doing to engage and educate the public as it relates to the police complaint process? That's one of my questions. My second question is, as it relates to the Community Oversight Board, are we speaking more in line with oversight of policy, oversight of process, or a combination of both? That's my second question. And then lastly, just for me and just for the audience and the viewing public, can you just like map out this process of how the COB would actually work? We have the concept here, but oftentimes we know concept and theory can be a little different than actual practice. So if I'm Sally Sue, and I hate to use that as an example, but if I'm Sally Sue and I have a complaint, can you walk us through that process and how the COB interrelates with the whole judicial system as it relates with our police department? Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so your first question was about educating the public, is that right? Okay, so NOAA has been doing events at its constituent member organizations. We have about 50 or 60 congregations and labor unions. We have done 3 public events. We have more scheduled. And then Community Oversight Now as a coalition has done a brunch and a town hall, additional public events to educate the public and get input too. It's not just a one-way street. And also in this meeting, it's not a one-way street. I mean, we have not introduced this legislation yet, and we want your insights and input, as we build this. And we've done that at every public event. We've gained from every public event. So that's the first question. Second, what was your second question? If you just give me just a brief snippet, it'll remind.
Oversight, policy, process, and both.
Okay, so we have really 2 core functions here, set out here. And one of them is this kind of back end looking into misconduct stuff, which we'll talk about in a second. But equally important, although not talked about as much, is a sort of democratic input into policy. What should the policies of the police department be in terms of, how are we going to address, say in Casey, there's been rising homicides. What's the answer there? Is the answer we just need to do more traffic stops and more, pedestrian shakedowns? Or is there another answer? And is it possible that those measures are actually making things worse, by alienating the community from the police, by making people feel like I'm afraid of the police, so I just need to handle my safety on my own, which can result in actually more violence. And so these kind of policy questions, the COB would be a venue for them. It wouldn't have any obligatory authority in that regard. It would have community liaisons that would outreach to the community, talk to folks, get input about, how are you feeling about what's going on in your community with law enforcement, and take that back to the analysts. There are research analysts on the staff that can look at data, look at policy, look at what's happened in other cities, and develop recommendations in concert with the legal counsel and the director, be published as reports, and then conveyed to, either the police or, in this regard, with these advisory reports, the sheriff's or the DA's office, the courts, to look at, is there a way we can do this better that's more just for everyone, that will get us a better result? All that's voluntary, but the hope is that the COB would have successful relationships with these other institutions in the justice system and be able to just act in concert to optimize our local policies. And then, separate from that would be the misconduct adjudication system. And just the nuts and bolts essentially are, a complaint is made by a citizen. It could be, just calling up on the phone. It could be sending an email. It could be going to the website, coming in person.
Anonymous also.
An anonymous complaint. And then, that would be assigned to an investigator, one of the full-time professional investigators with the COB. They would do the investigation. I know that folks are interested in, how long, what should the time limits be? I think it's a bit challenging to set a hard and fast time limit. The Office of Professional Accountability right now tends to wrap up its investigations in about month and a half, give or take. And, you know, that's a pretty good guideline for a lot. You know, if it's something more serious or more involved with a lot of witnesses or footage that you've got to get from Walmart or wherever, you know, it could take longer. But obviously the investigator moves it along. They get statements from all the witnesses that are involved, get whatever video or audio evidence is out there, put it together. They come up with recommended factual findings, work with the director and the legal counsel to see, you know, do these establish policy violations? And then the director makes a recommendation from there. And one thing I do want to clarify that's extremely important is that, you know, this is not a purely punitive model. You know, we've been actually in touch with the Nashville Conflict Resolution Center and some other parties about, you know, what are some restorative justice approaches that could be used or mediation approaches that could be used, you know, for some of this lesser misconduct, because, you know, the bottom line is what we're trying to accomplish here is unity, you know, between, you know, disaffected parts of the community and law enforcement. And so, you know, sometimes punishment doesn't accomplish that goal. Sometimes punishment doesn't create the best learning environment, and you might have a more effective systemic change from a mediation or a restorative process. But so anyway, so, you know, basically the director comes up with the recommendation. This is how we think this should be resolved. And then each party, you know, the police officer or the citizen would have the right to say, I don't accept that recommendation. I would like a hearing with the actual board members. And then if that happened, then you would have, you know, like a mini hearing where people could give testimony and statements and evidence would be reviewed, and the board members would make a determination, you know, by essentially majority vote, you know, about, you know, is this complaint going to be sustained, and what should be the outcome if it is.
Gotcha. Thank you, sir. We have two more questions, Councilman Pulley and then Councilman at Large Jim Schulman. And then we'll wrap this up. Councilman Pulley.
Thank you, sir. Can you hear me? Yeah, I guess you can. Thanks. I'll keep this brief in the interest of time. You mentioned at some level the composition of your proposed board, but you did not address how those members would be selected. So can you address that now?
Sure. Go
ahead. Right now, we'll have 7 of those would be elected from the community organizations. For example, like the community organizations like NOAA, Black Lives Matter, NAACP. Some of those organizations would actually recommend those. The final approval of all board members would be the council. The council has final approval. They would recommend. And then you would also have 2 from the mayor's office, and then 2 from the council. Okay.
I saw the composition. I just wanted to know who has the ultimate authority under your plan to make the selections, and you're telling me it's the council?
The council.
All right. And I did see a bit of the criteria, and my question is, your intent to have this oversight board mirror the demographics of our community in any way, shape, or form?
We're trying to get we've looked at boards all over the country. We've actually had different studies done, and we're really trying to look at really what works. So it's not necessarily the demographic of the community, but we're trying to look at something that actually works in terms of the selection. So if you have where the community has input, and then also lawmakers also have input, we just feel you have a better success. And the majority ones that seem to be successful, they seem like they have the majority of those that come from recommended from the community.
Okay. All right. I come at this from a pretty unique perspective, having served in law enforcement, and I see that side of the equation. Having raised an African-American child, I hear from him constantly about his perspective. So it puts me in a pretty interesting position here. So I'm intrigued by the concept. I would challenge the members of the council who are wanting this legislation and considering sponsoring this legislation. This is a good move to introduce us to the topic. I think we need a lot more study, a lot more education. I would want to learn more about this because there are certain things that concern me about it. I heard an awful lot of rhetoric from people weighing in with some pretty inflammatory comments about this police shooting before there was a real evidentiary basis to make those claims. And it really concerns me when I hear that kind of rhetoric. I prefer to have things thoroughly investigated and then weigh in based on evidence, not any other topic or agenda. So I really think it's important that we put together, if you're going to do this, put together a group of people that really are interested in fairly and objectively looking at these investigations. And another concern of mine would be, as we all know, when you're conducting an investigation like this, certain material to which investigators are going to have access is very sensitive. So you also need to have a composition of a board like this that's trustworthy with that information. Although we want to be transparent, transparency comes in due time. So those are concerns that me and I know some others would have. So that's why I think it's very important to continue the engagement process as you move forward with this, rather than springing a bill on us without some more of these kind of meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just have confidence that if any city can make this work, I feel that Nashville should be able to make this work.
Gotcha. Councilman Schulman.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this will be real quick because I know we've got another committee right behind it. Kyle, I think this is a question for you. I'm looking at when you put up the graphs of the numbers, Nashville was coming in with like 0% in terms of with excessive force and a couple of other things. And now I'm looking at the sustained rates of citizens-initiated excessive force complaints, which is actually in the materials. Right. I guess my question is, is there data that you have that you could submit to us that says, for example, Austin or any place that has like a community oversight board, citizens review panel, whatever you want to call it, that shows what their percentage is, and maybe what it does is it says, okay, so we don't have that, and we may be at 0% on a couple of these things. What about the other groups, the other cities that you put up on the board? What is their rate in terms of those same percentages? I know this nationwide average is at 8%, citizen-initiated excessive force complaints. Right. But can you drill down a little bit further into some of those cities that you referenced that have a community oversight board, and tell us, as compared to Nashville, what are those percentages when the community oversight board is looking at these things? So that nationwide average data comes from a Bureau of Justice report from about 13, 14 years ago. And they extracted data from, like a lot of cities. I pull it up, but I think about 100 cities. And so, that average comes from that. And, what they did is found that once cities established civilian review boards, the number of complaints tended to actually go up. And the interpretation of that is that people don't have confidence, in the system, pre-citizen review board, okay? And so once you establish it, then the number of complaints actually goes up. So, working from those stats, sometimes in those contexts, the sustain rate would actually go down a little, but bear in mind that you had a greater volume of complaints coming in, and so, bear that in mind in terms of how you think about the sustain rate. Right, and I understand that. I guess what I'm asking is, if you take a city like Austin that has a review panel or a board,
right?
If you look at Nashville that doesn't have one, and if we're floating around 0%, whatever our percentages are, but then you look at a city like Austin, which is a comparable city to us, and they have a review board. When you look at like excessive force, what is their percentage? What is their COB finding when they actually do the reviews? And I guess what I'm asking, do we have that data, or can we get it? I assume that like a city like Austin would have that.
We do not have that data. If it exists, we can get it.
I think it'd be helpful to have some peer cities, several, and then.
I think it would be ideal to have kind of a before and after snapshot, where you could say this is pre-civilian review board, this is post. If we don't have it, we'd be happy to work on that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh. Well, I want to call this meeting to close. I'm sure there'll be members of this esteemed panel afterwards. Gentlemen and ladies, I thank you for coming and presenting. And so ends this joint committee meeting with Budget and Minority Caucus. Thank you, members of the council, for attending.
Thank you.
I will turn you on to. I want to thank everybody for being here. We're going to move on with the Budget and Finance Committee regular session today. I want to thank everybody. Want to thank everybody for attending the Minority Caucus and Budget and Finance Committee meeting on the Community Oversight Board, and we're going to move on to the Budget and Finance Committee meeting for Monday, July the 17th, 2017. There is a quorum, and that being said, we're going to start on with Resolution RS 2017-785, appropriates $26,146,400 from the General Fund for the purchase of equipment and building repairs for the various departments of Metro government. Is there a motion? Motion made and seconded. And our first speaker, Councilman Glover.
Thank you, Chair. If I could, I'd like to have the administration, because I've gotten a few phone calls from some of my constituents asking me to explain why this is happening after we've already passed a rather large capital spending plan. And so if we could, I think I have a pretty good idea, but why the initial request, and explain exactly how it's going to help our city, please.
I'll take that question.
It's on.
Hello.
Well, let me try it now.
Hello.
The volume's not very good. Yeah.
I'll talk as loud as I can. Is that okay?
Okay.
This appropriation is from 4% reserve funds, and this is a specific pot of money that is set aside in the budget each year for equipment and repairs in the city. It's important to, and these are for projects that are not long-term capital projects, but items that generally have a useful life of 5 years or less. For example, computers are typically funded through 4% resolutions because the useful life of a computer is about 4 to 5 years, and you would not want to finance a computer in a capital spending plan over the life of 30 years. And each year during the budget process, departments submit requests for these 4% funds, and we bring those to the Metro Council generally during the year for consideration based on the submissions that come in from the departments. This request, what has been filed with this one, is a little over $26 million. We have well in excess of $100 million of 4% requests that were presented to the administration. And just like anything else, we've gone through and we have vetted all of those and included the items in here that we believe need to be funded at this time.
And I appreciate the answer. Thank you. I think, though, the example you used is one of the reasons I think we need to keep asking the questions, because if you remember a few years ago, this body actually agreed to fund a computer purchase for the schools of $6 million with the 30-year bond, which I think was a mistake. Anyway, I do appreciate you answering that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Schulman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of questions. I think Ms. Whittemore is in the back from General Services, and she was nice enough to send me kind of what was going on with Knowles and Bordeaux. And just a couple of questions, if she doesn't mind. It looked like there was money, some money set aside for furniture. And I know that Councilman Leonardo and I, when we used to go out there and visit, a lot of it had to do with like tables and chairs that were falling apart. Is that pretty much what that money is being used for?
Are you talking about Bordeaux?
Yeah, I'm talking about Knowles.
Oh, Knowles. So let me tell you the process and where we are and how we got to this. Knowles, we don't manage that particular property, but we were called in to do an assessment of of the property just because of some of the issues that were going on. And so what we did is we identified those things that were life safety issues, and we've addressed that. And that's basically what you're seeing is the $327,000. We've also, there are equipment that's in disrepair, so yes, some of that is that.
Well, and specifically, I think when we used to go out there, there were, again, those dining room tables and chairs. That's what I was trying to figure out if that's what the furniture expenditure was for.
To be honest with you, I'd have to get back and see if how we actually spent that money, but I can let you know.
Okay, that'd be great. And the other question is, and this may have been taken care of, and I understand, obviously, we have somebody out there helping to operate it, but there were like 4 vehicles back there that, when they were there, I don't think anybody had any insurance on those things, so I'm glad they weren't operational at that point. But I think they belonged to Metro. And so the question is, do you know whatever happened to those things? Are they working right now? They were all just sitting right behind the facility.
Well, Stacy, do you know anything about those?
I can jump in here if you like, Nancy. Those vehicles,
okay, that's what I thought. So they're.
Well, it's a systems problem, and maybe it's good we're discussing 4% money. I'm gonna turn everything off and turn it all back on again and see if that does anything. All right. Let's see if that makes any difference.
Okay, no. You need
Hello.
I'll just try to.
Well,
Ms. Whittemore, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Jim, Councilman Schulman.
Well, if you don't mind speaking as loudly as you can.
Okay, I will.
Thank you.
So Knowles is not a part of the overall fleet allocation that we manage. It's I guess an enterprise for the lack of fund. So those vehicles are not a part of our allocation, so we don't maintain them or service them.
Okay, so her response was that they're not a part of General Services fleet maintenance. But I guess the question is, when we used to see them out there, we didn't know who they belonged to. We thought they were Metro-owned, but if they don't belong to General Services, does finance know actually who they belong to? You want to use my microphone?
Hey, maybe that's working. It's my understanding that when they rolled off on their own, Metro gave those assets to Bordeaux Knowles, and those vehicles then belonged to those organizations. So they were no longer maintained by fleet, but they never removed the markers. So they are rather old vehicles that are still out there, but Metro General Services had nothing more to do with those. They probably should have been surplused a long time ago.
Are they still out there? Do we know?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I can get a report on that if you need it.
No, that would be helpful. And Ms. Whittemore, one other question. In terms of actually switching over to Bordeaux, there's about over $600,000 that's going there. So the question is, I know that's run, I think, operated by Signature. So is that the things that we're doing there? I think it's maybe some. I don't know if it's a cooler. I don't know. There's equipment that has to be fixed. I assume that's all pursuant to the contract that we have. The Signature's operating it, but we have responsibilities to put some money into the maintenance of the facility.
John?
We're responsible under the contract for all life safety repairs, and so all critical systems and things that are determined necessary for the care of the people and ensure their adequate care and comfort. And so they submit a list to finance of all those things. Finance reviews the list to make sure that the what is needed and the bids submitted are accurate, and then it's submitted for a 4% request.
Okay. All right.
It's my understanding there was an audit that identified or inspection from the state health department, and so that's where a lot of those items came from. And so it's in our budget, and we'll do some oversight, but we have not been the department that's been managing those maintenance and repairs.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And just one last question. And this was a question I had before for Mr. Jameson. So the fund itself, the 4% fund right now has about, I think it's about maybe $33 million in it. We're spending about, this is about $26 million. Overall, the fund we would say is going to have about $64 million in it. So that's got projected unrealized revenue of about $31 million. Is that right?
Can I explain those numbers to you?
Sure, yeah.
In terms of funding availability, we establish what we think the estimate of those revenues will be, but we cannot allocate those dollars until they are actually collected. So when you see that notation in there in terms of unrealized revenue, that's an anticipated budget number based on the actual revenue collections during the year.
And just for my benefit, it's about $31 million, I think, that's projected. When does that come in? Does it come in over time, or how does it?
Over the year, so that as we have tax collections and collect other revenues during the year, that revenue is set aside.
Okay.
4% of those specific line items are set aside and put into this account as a reserve to be used for 4% purchases.
So is that fairly systematic in terms of which every year it comes in about the same time?
Of course, we have the largest collections. It'll be in January, February when tax collections start coming in.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Seeing no one else in the queue, the motion having been made and seconded, actually, Council Lady Henderson. There came in. Thank you.
Chair. Oh, thank you. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
I guess it sounds like it's on, but it doesn't certainly sound like it's working. I apologize. I was not here right at the start, but did we determine that we were not going to ask particular questions of departments regarding what was in their lump sums?
You please ask questions.
I had a question for the Parks Department, please.
Thank you, Mooning. You may have to speak loudly in that off of that microphone.
Director Odom, just as chair of the Parks Committee, I was hoping that you could just, not a complete itemization, but if you could just share for the public roughly what that $1.2 million includes, please.
Sure. This proposed appropriation is $500,000 for equipment and maintenance for our maintenance division. It is $500,000 for system-wide cameras, security cameras replacement and additions, and then $250,000 for replacement of a playground at Red Caboose Park.
Okay, and regarding the security cameras, are those internal to our community centers or are those external within parks? Can you speak to those just a little bit more, please?
Sure. First on the list they're broken into 3 categories. The first category is for replacement of locations that currently have cameras, and again, they need to be replaced or additions need to be made. The second grouping is for locations where there are currently no cameras, and those are primarily community centers. There are no cameras, and we need to get cameras in those locations. And then the third kind of grouping would be other locations in the park system where we'd like to put cameras. We do have those grouped based on priority. It's based on criminal activity, foot traffic, or visitation and attendance. So we prioritize those that way. This $500,000, we have about in the department, the whole request would be about $1 million, and so this is a good start on getting replacements and additions to those locations that we have identified internally.
Thank you, Director. I appreciate it. Chair, may I pose one other question to Public Works, please?
Here we are, our director.
Director Sturdivant, could you just to share with the community on the miscellaneous equipment, is there anything in there for a bike lane specific sweeper?
There's not.
As a piece of equipment?
No.
Is that on y'all's radar screen as you begin to expand our bike lanes and bikeways?
That's something we hadn't considered, but we can.
If I could ask you to please put that on your radar screen for equipment. Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Council Lady. Seeing no one else in the queue, all in favor of 785, please say aye. All opposed, 785 is recommended to the Council. Resolution RS 2017-768 and Resolution 2017-787. The administration has asked for both of these to be withdrawn, so we will move on to RS 2017-788. Approves a grant from the Tennessee Arts Commission to the Metro Arts Commission for operating support to cover expenses related to art programs, research, and community engagement. There is a proposed amendment. Is there a motion? Motion made and seconded. I will move the amendment. All in favor of the amendment, say aye. Moved and seconded. Seeing no one in the queue, all in favor of the proposed amendment, please say aye. The amendment is approved, and then on the bill itself, 788, all in favor, please say aye. 788 is recommended to the Council. Resolution RS 2017-789, Council Lady Haywood and Johnson as sponsors, approves a grant from Oasis Center to the Davidson County Juvenile Court for the implementation of the Wyman's Teen Outreach Program to decrease risky behaviors and increase life skills among youth. Is there a motion? Motion made and seconded. Seeing no one in the queue, all in favor of 789, please say aye. 789 is recommended to the Council. Resolution RS 2017-790, Councilman Karen Johnson and Councilman Elrod and others are the sponsors, authorizes the Director of Public Property to exercise an option agreement for the purchase of a flood-prone property at 3060 High Rigger Drive for Metro Water Services. Is there a motion? Motion made and seconded, and Councilman Leonardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question. I'm not sure if maybe some of the administration could answer, but I know that Metro has, or did have, a few $1 million set back that they purchased flood-prone properties in accordance with FEMA and TEMA and the like. And I know that they have been making a push in my district with several tracts on West Hamilton, and I didn't know if these funds that Metro Water was going to use are part of those monies.
All right. Thank you. Jim?
Yes, Councilman Jim Snyder, Metro Water, and Stan Robinson. I'm going to let Stan answer that question. He's a manager of our flood buyout program.
Yes, the money that we're proposing to use on West Hamilton and other areas is part of the money that was allocated for 100% Metro funding.
And that's the money that's being used on this one?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Shulman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just checking. It's a small piece of property, but there's a house on it. So what we're doing is we're buying the house and that piece of property.
Yes, sir, and demolish the home.
Okay. All right. That's all I needed to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Glover.
Yeah, the question may have already been answered. So the full $125,000 is coming out of Metro funds. There's no matching, no anything. Is that what I heard? I think.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
All right. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Council Lady Allen.
Just from a good stewardship standpoint, when we demolish those homes, do we take anything to Habitat Home Store, or how does that work?
Well, we can't do that really. Well, we could, but we'd have to go through the thing where Metro, where you sell it. I'm not familiar with what it's called.
Procurement?
There's a
E-bid,
process.
okay.
Yes, but to do that, we would have to hire
Excuse me. Council, typically there's not anything salvageable in those homes, and typically when we're tearing them down, there's asbestos and so forth, so it's probably more prudent to dispose of those properly.
Okay, thank you.
One last thing to add to that is that we have to hire someone to validate that everything is in 100% working condition. Every ceiling fan, every light fixture, everything, to validate that it's 100%, so we're not liable.
Yeah, thank you. And then back to Councilman Glover.
Okay, so I'm confused. If you have to make sure everything is working, how can you not go ahead and try to sell it off?
No, sir. What I'm saying is before we could sell it, we would have to hire an inspector.
Okay, so before you could, and unfortunately the volume's not very good, so it's hard to hear you guys today. Right. Okay, I know, Dr. Weiner, I'll get me a hearing aid. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Seeing no one else in the queue, all in favor of 790, please say aye. 790 is recommended to the council. Resolution RS 2017-791 authorizes the Metro Department of Law to compromise and settle the personal injury claim of Danielle Coggins against Metro government in the amount of $11,000. Is there a motion? Motion made and seconded. Seeing no one currently in the queue, all in favor of 791, please say aye. 791 is recommended to the council. Resolution RS 2017-792. Council Lady Karen Johnson and Haywood as sponsors, appropriates grant funds from the Tennessee Housing Development Agency to the Metro Action Commission for Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program services for the elderly, disabled, veterans, and households with children under the age of 6 years. Is the motion made and seconded? Seeing no one in the queue, all in favor of 792, please say aye. 792 is recommended to the council. Resolution RS 2017-793 approves a grant from the Tennessee Department of Health to the Metro Board of Health to support the delivery of public health services. Is there a motion? Motion made and seconded. Seeing no one in the queue, all in favor of 793, please say aye. 793 is recommended to the council. Resolution 2017-794, Council Lady Weiner is the sponsor, approves a grant from Adrian Budnick to the Metro Board of Health to provide emergency medical care for animals at Metro Animal Control. I see the sponsor here. Is there a motion? Motion made and seconded. Seeing no one in the queue, all in favor of 794, please say aye. 794 is recommended to the council. Resolution RS 2017-795 approves an agreement between the Public Health Accreditation Board and the Metro Board of Health to become an accredited public health department. Is there a motion? Motion made and seconded. Seeing no one in the queue, all in favor of 795, please say aye. 795 is recommended to the council. Resolution RS 2017-796, Councilman Withers and Henderson as sponsors, approves a grant from the Laughlin Springs Neighborhood Association to the Metro Parks and Recreation to purchase an arcade-style air hockey table for the Shelby Community Center. Is there a motion? Motion made and seconded. Seeing no one in the queue, all in favor of 796, please say aye. 796 is recommended to the council. Resolution RS 2017-797, Council Lady Murphy and others as sponsors, approves a grant from the Tennessee Department of Labor and Workforce Development to the Nashville Career Advancement Center to establish programs and services to be used for the youth program. Is there a motion? Motion made and seconded. All in favor of 797, please say aye. 797 is recommended to the council. Resolution RS 2017-798, Councilman Anthony Davis, the sponsor, approves a grant from the Community and Foundation of Middle Tennessee to the Nashville Career Advancement Center and will provide funding for young people working through the Opportunity Now program. Is there a motion? Motion made and seconded. Council Lady Gilmore.
Thank you. I didn't know if the people were here to give an update about it.
Yes, I believe they are. Thank you, Council Lady.
Yes, thank you. So our Opportunity Now supported employment positions for this summer ended last Friday for 2 out of our programs. We employed directly with our funds about 2,150 young people, and that's in addition to the other direct hire positions that were posted through our portal. So we stopped counting at 10,312 opportunities posted through our portal. We had about 9,500 young people apply through the portal, and we employed 2,100 of those this summer ourselves directly.
Thank you, Council Lady. Councilman Glover.
Okay, because I'm a numbers person, I'm confused. So the number was 10,000 I thought that we had funded, and you had 93, or 13,000 I think is what you just said, that applied, and you hired a little over 2,000. What did we fund? Apparently I must have missed this one way off the boat because it was much higher than 2,000.
Our target was 10,000 opportunities. We did not want to be in direct competition with employers who needed workforce. So we posted on our portal positions that were for direct hire jobs, for after school, for summer jobs. So our total number of opportunities posted was 10,312. We funded, or you all funded, about 2,200 of those positions through supported employment, specifically in career exploration and for young people ages 14 and 15 who were going to need us to create opportunities because the private sector didn't really hire them. So we had about 2,150 of those. For that total of 10,000 opportunities, we had about 9,500 young people apply.
Okay, so Chair, if you don't mind, I would like to see the line item on this because I completely misunderstood this as we were going through the budget process. And my apologies for not digging deeper.
So Councilman, we could ask the administration, are you talking about how much was the appropriation for opportunities now?
And what was actually spent? Because again, it's my fault. I tried to pay attention, but apparently I missed this one. So I would just like to understand exactly what was appropriated, what was spent, and I need to go back through the numbers to understand what exactly we did appropriate.
Okay. Well, we have I'll turn this over to the administration table.
We can get that number and get it back to you.
Okay. Well, normally I don't miss this very badly, but am I way off base here?
And you just want the numbers for last fiscal year, the fiscal year that just ended at 6/30?
Yeah, I thought as we were going through the budget process, we were talking about hiring 10,000. And so if I just need to understand it because apparently I missed this one. Well, I missed this one by apparently 80%.
It's 10,000 opportunities. It was never the intention that the city would fund 10,000 specific interns itself. The city has between 9,500 and 10,000 employees. If the city hired all 10,000 interns, every employee would have an intern.
Okay, well, I guess, so let me be just extremely rude. Opportunities. I drive down the street and I've got an opportunity to sell everybody I pass. So I guess I just need to understand in a greater degree what we're actually talking about and how we're budgeting the money. Yeah. Because I didn't hear opportunities. I just heard the 10,000 number. And again, it's my fault. I was off by 80% on this one.
And they have really done an excellent job in tracking that information in terms of metro employment versus the other companies that have come to the table. And that has been part of the whole initiative, is to get businesses and others in the private sector to come along and to encourage them to also offer youth opportunities and jobs, because we did see this as a community-wide initiative and not just a metro government initiative.
Well, then since I'll finish my question with this, specifically in my district, if you don't mind, give me the numbers and tell me in my district if there was any youth that was able to be helped in my district. Please.
They actually have that information. I have seen that data. So they track it. They track it by is it by zip code and district?
Address.
Okay. Well, I would like to see it. And again, I'm not being critical. It's just what I heard and what I thought I was hearing was two different things. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Vice Chair Vercher.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to expand upon Councilman Glover's request also. I would like the report broken down by district also. And also, I would like to know the employers for these various opportunities as well, too. Sure. If we can get that. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Lady Dowell.
Thank you. First, I just want to congratulate you all. What a wonderful program. And I'm very excited about it. I think when you get the results, you'll see that a lot of kids in my district participated in it, including my own niece and nephew. and my nephew was reluctant to participate in it. He didn't want to get up, but he did. And he participated in a robotics program. And just to let you know, you should speak with some of the children that participated in it. I will tell you that every summer I deal with a bunch of graffiti and crime and things going on in my community, and most of the time it's committed by young people. And I can't say enough about the program because I do know I've had far less calls this summer than I've ever had in the 6 years that I've been a council person. Now, maybe they're not calling me, which I think would be odd, but the children are participating in it, and my niece and nephew both spoke very highly of the program. They put their money in a bank account, like a savings account, or they put it on a little card. And they started, well, they already were saving, but they're saving money and learning how to be financially responsible. They set up a business during the program. And I guess I understood it differently. I knew that these were 10,000 opportunities. And in fact, I've spoke with businesses in our community about participating in the program. And one of the things I shared with some of you was that in your districts, if there are not businesses there, or if you have some small businesses there, encourage them to participate in the program because Ronnie Stein and the rest of the staff were really instrumental in, if you gave them a lead of a company, following up with it, getting them set up, coming out to your community, helping the kids, look at the opportunities, fill out the paperwork and everything. And I know you guys work you work yourself. I mean, you've done a great job. You worked hard. And I would, hope that we can continue this program and expand it. The transportation worked great. The job opportunities worked great. It helped out, and I just hope, we can continue this program and get to the 10,000 jobs that he talked about, at some point. But I do know that it was the opportunities. I understood that and understood our funding on it, so thank you.
Thank you, Council Lady. The bill sponsor, Councilman Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Just everything she said, plus was happy to sponsor this. And I know they may be coming back with more funding passed through later. And so there'll be opportunities, no pun intended, for some updates and get these numbers to us. And again, proud to sponsor. I know it's a lot of jobs and opportunities for youth in Davidson County. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Council Lady Allen.
Thank you. I just want to very quickly echo the praises of this program. I think it's great. One thing I hope we can add next year, which I've already put my wish list in, is to continue to expand the transportation opportunities, because I know there were some jobs out there that kids just couldn't get to, and it's going to take some thinking outside the box and maybe a little bit more funding to do that. And I think it's absolutely worth it. So thanks for this bill. I support it.
Thank you, Council Lady. Council Lady Gilmore.
I just want to say I think it's totally awesome, and I look forward to us doing it again.
Thank you, Council Lady. Seeing no one else in the queue, all in favor of 798, please say aye. 798 is recommended to the council. Resolution RS 2017-799, Councilman Pardue is the sponsor. Myself and others approves a Nashville bike grant from the State Department of Safety and Homeland Security to the Metro Police Department to conduct vehicle and bicycle stops to educate the public and gain compliance with state and local ordinances. There's a motion and a second. Seeing no one else in the queue, all in favor of 799, please say aye. 799 is recommended to the council. Resolution 2017-800, Councilman Pardue and myself as sponsors. This has been withdrawn at the request of the state, so we will skip over that and go to Resolution RS 2017-801. Council Lady Henderson, Elrod, and others as sponsors, approves an application for Organics Management Grant from the State Department of Environment and Conservation to the Metro Public Works Department to offer educational programs on food waste reduction as well as home composting. Is there a motion? Motion made and seconded, and Council Lady Henderson.
Thank you, Chair Cooper. I wonder if Ms. Smith from Public Works could come and speak to this. I believe this is a $30,000 grant with a $30,000 match, and I was just wondering specifically how the funds would be put to use and how we would measure the success of this grant program.
So and you're correct, it's a $60,000 grant. We have to match 50%. And what we're going to do is two separate things. One is going to be kind of aggressive education and outreach. Backyard composting is one of the easiest ways to reduce waste, and it's something that we've just never had you know, a pot of money to spend a lot of time educating people about. So we're really super excited about this. If any of y'all haven't composted in your backyard, it is so easy. Thank you, sir. Oh, excellent. Everybody's wonderful. It's very easy. And so the first part of this is that we do want to do a lot of education and outreach and hold a lot of workshops and talk to a lot of people. But the second part of this, or sort of the second half of the money, is that we want to purchase some containers that we can offer, some at no cost and some at reduced cost, to sort of eliminate that barrier that people might have of, well, I don't know that I have money to buy a compost bin. We can offer it either for completely free or at a reduced rate.
And would that be similar to the rain barrel program that you had done previously, as far as low cost, no cost? The compost.
That's water. I don't know exactly.
Oh, water department did that. Okay.
I would imagine it's somewhat similar. I'm not terribly familiar with their program.
And then so the breakdown then between materials versus classes, and where and how are you conducting the classes, and how many do you intend to conduct, or have you decided?
We're hoping to reach 1,200 people at this point with about 100 classes, I think it was. Some would be small and even one-on-one. And then also community groups. So that's kind of the breakdown. And fingers crossed we get this grant, and we'll be coming back hopefully to get approval to receive the money.
Great. And then you would partner with local neighborhood associations, perhaps? So
Absolutely, yes. We want to do some in schools, but we also want to partner with some of the organizations that are out there that do this as well. But community groups, maybe even going into, I mean, one idea that I had is that we could go to a neighborhood group, we could talk to people, we could have a free one free compost bin that, you know, people could put their name in a hat and somebody get a free one.
Okay, great.
It's going to be great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Lady. Council Lady Allen.
Thank you. Ms. Smith, another question. So this is not restaurant, this is purely home composting. Is that correct?
It's actually correct. The grant application was very specific. I had grand ideas, and then I ran them by TDEC, and they told me I was crazy and that I needed to pare it down to backyard composting. Okay. This grant was being offered to a broad range of people. So there are 3 or 4 entities, nonprofit organizations in Davidson County that are also applying for it, as well as some companies that are applying for it. And so they were trying to get everybody to kind of stay in the area of their expertise. But I think this is the first time the state has offered anything quite like this. So there was a huge amount of interest around it. I think we'll see some of the folks that you've probably heard from before, the Compost Company, Compost Nashville, the Nashville Food Project, and a number of people. The Cumberland River Compact, I believe, also, I'm sorry, TEC also submitted an application. So it's very exciting.
Have competition. Well, I just want to, I'm growing some amazing melons from my compost heap right now. So I think that means I'm not doing it right, but they're going to be great melons. So I think it's a great way to keep from throwing things away. So thanks for doing it.
Nothing better than the volunteer vegetables from the compost pile.
Thank you, Council Lady. Seeing no one else in the queue, all in favor of 801, please say aye. 801 is recommended to the council. Bills on second reading. Councilman Elrod, the sponsor of 2017-801, amends the Metro Code to require approval by the Director of the Mayor's Office of Neighborhoods and Community Engagement and the Director of Transportation and Sustainability for obstructions and excavations which would close or occupy any portion of the public right-of-way for a period in excess of 6 months. The sponsor has requested deferral to the second meeting in September. Is there a motion? Motion made and seconded. All in favor of deferring to the second meeting in September, please say aye. Aye. The bill is deferred to the second meeting in September. Bill number BL 2017-802, Councilman Elrod is the sponsor, amends the Metro Code to revise the penalties for improper right-of-way closures and to require the Department of Public Works to establish a way for the public to submit evidence. The sponsor has requested to defer to the second meeting in September. Is there a motion? Motion made and seconded. All in favor of deferring to the second meeting of September, please say aye. Yes, Councilman.
Can we just get a little more information on this? I mean, I realize being deferred, but can we get kind of how exactly this works? And not right now, Mr. Jameson, but if you could just give it a little more input, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure. Right now, what I can tell you is that under the proposal from Councilman Elrod, you have various penalties that are prescribed for the offense is laid out in the analysis, and the penalty is to triple the permit amount. Well, that varies wildly across the differing permits that you're applying for. So he wants a more objective set of $50 a day, whatever it is, for the specific offense. That's his objective.
And do we have the authority? Do we have the authority to do that? Because it's the permit, it's not a fine. So we're not going into those waters, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Seeing no one else in the queue, all in favor of deferring 802 to the second meeting in September, please say aye. It is deferred to the second meeting in September. Bill number BL 2017-804, Councilman Anthony Davis, Elrod, and others are the sponsors, authorizes the acquisition of certain right-of-way easements, drainage easements, temporary construction easements, and property rights by negotiation or condemnation for public projects for the severe street sidewalk improvements. Is there a motion? Motion made and seconded. Seeing no one in the queue, all in favor of 804, please say aye. 804 is recommended to the council. Bill number 2017-805, Councilman Withers, Elrod, and others is the sponsor, authorizes the acquisition of certain right-of-way easements, drainage easements, temporary construction easements, and property rights by negotiation or condemnation for public projects for the severe street sidewalk improvements plan. Is there a motion? Motion made and seconded. Seeing no one in the queue, all in favor of 805, please say aye. 805 is recommended to the council. Bill number BL 2017-806, Council Lady Allen Elrod, as the sponsors, authorizes the acquisition of certain right-of-way easements, drainage easements, temporary construction easements, and property rights by negotiation or condemnation for public projects for the Gale Lane sidewalk improvements. Is there a motion? Motion made and seconded. Councilman Glover.
Just out of curiosity, because that's the second time we've heard content where we may condemn it. I mean, why is that particular language in this?
That's been the caption for every easement negotiation.
Always? Okay. So without sounding like a bully, it's sort of like, if you don't do this, then we're going to do it for you?
Well, that's a last resort. I would consider an extremely last resort that, to my knowledge, has only been extremely sparingly used in the history of metro government.
Okay. Well, I guess it's a little glaring that I'm hearing it now, because I know we do these all the time, but I just hadn't quite heard it that way before, so. Sorry. But when we pass it, Director Cooper, let me just make sure I understand. If we pass this, then if the owner doesn't agree to what we want to give them, we can say, well, too bad, we're going to take it anyway.
Well, we could, we would have to file a condemnation lawsuit and put the money up with the court for the fair market value
Which is,
of whatever easement you're taking.
Okay, it's still the fair market value.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. So I hadn't really read it that way before and was just questioning and asking because, again, I just
for a lot of projects, if the department cannot get the voluntary easements or agreement from people, they just don't do the project. So
okay. Well, and again, that's fine. I just, again, was asking for a little clarification. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Council Lady Gilmore.
Thank you. I just want to see, has something in the process changed, or has it always been? Okay. And so if there was something that needed to be condemned, does a council member still have to do a separate legislation in addition to the lawsuit?
And then once you authorize the acquisition by negotiation or condemnation, that's the end of the council action. And then the department negotiates with the property owner to obtain whatever property interest we need. And in the very rare instances where we cannot get agreement from the property owner, then we could go and file a lawsuit.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Council Lady. Council Lady Allen.
And I just want to point out, on this particular project, every neighbor signed a petition saying they were dying to have a sidewalk, so it's not going to cost us any money.
Great. Thank you, Council Lady. Seeing no one else in the queue, all in favor of 806, please say aye. 806 is recommended to the council. Bill number 2017-807, Councilman Rosenberg, Elrod, and others, authorizes the acquisition of certain right-of-way easements, drainage easements, temporary construction easements, and property rights by negotiation or condemnation for use in public projects for Bellevue Road sidewalk improvements. Is there a motion? Motion made and seconded. Seeing no one in the queue, all in favor of 807, please say aye. 807 is recommended to the council. Bill number BL 2017-808, Councilman Anthony Davis, Elrod, and others as sponsors, approves an agreement between the Metro Department of Water and Sewage Services and Lincoln Management and Investment Services, LLC, to provide public water service improvements. Is there a motion? Motion made and seconded. Seeing no one else in the queue, all in favor of 808, please say aye. Aye. 808 is recommended to the council. We have two late filed items. Resolution 803 and Ordinance 833. Both are filed on Friday, both involving MDHA and rather substantial and lengthy pieces of legislation, and requiring an appearance before the Rules Committee to have them be late filed. My personal recommendation is actually to defer Resolution 803 to track with the ordinance 833, to have 833 pass on first reading, and then both the resolution and the ordinance appear next time. So there's a motion to defer Resolution 803 for one meeting.
You want to read the caption?
Let me read the caption here. This is late filed enough to have the commission. A resolution authorizing the Metropolitan Mayor to submit the 2017 to 2018 annual update to the 2013 to 2018 Consolidated Plan for Housing and Community Development to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. I make a motion to defer this for one meeting. Is there a motion? Motion made and seconded. Councilman Glover.
I'm just going to ask you to break that down in English for me to where I understand what exactly we're doing and what we might be coming back to, please, sir.
Well, again, this is late filed. It is a resolution to submit our annual update to the housing plan to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and I believe that housing plan is in the ordinance. So this is a resolution to submit it, and then the ordinance is the plan itself. So the ordinance would be on first reading tomorrow night, second reading next time, so the resolution could catch up with the ordinance.
So it's more of a housekeeping,
Yeah,
Mr.
well,
Jameson?
That's fair.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Council Lady Allen?
Two questions. One, if there's someone from MDHA that can explain why it's late filed, and two, if they can let us know if the delay will hurt them anyway or if it's no problem.
Great. I see folks from MDHA right here.
Thank you for the opportunity to explain. I'm Angie Hubbard, the Director of Community Development, and our apologies for the late filing. We did have some logistical issues with both pieces of legislation. These are actually not tied to each other. The resolution is tied to a 5-year consolidated plan that passed via ordinance in 2013. This is the 5th and final year of our allocation under this existing plan. The ordinance pertains to the assessment of fair housing, which is a study that we've done over the past 6 months, and those goals will be incorporated into the next 5-year consolidated plan. So these are two different submittals to HUD. The resolution is based on the continuing resolution that Congress appropriated for the federal fiscal budget, and so we're already 1 month into our program year. We have a statutory deadline that Congress passed with the Housing Act back in the 70s, that we have to submit this action plan by August the 16th. HUD cannot provide relief, which if it's not submitted, we do not get our funds, but we can come in 2 weeks. We will still track according and be able to submit on time by August the 16th.
Oh, thank you. Council Lady Allen, all right. Council Lady Gilmore.
Thank you. I think Council Lady Allen asked a couple of questions. One was I wanted to know why it was submitted late. The second piece was, though, I do think, I remember when MDHA came before us to speak about this assessment, And so if you could just speak a little bit more about it. I know you had community meetings and exactly what this legislation does and just what were the outcomes. And then I'll ask the next question.
Right. Well, I do understand that we'll be before this committee in 2 weeks to present exactly on the assessment of fair housing. That document has been provided. That does have all the goals in it, so I don't have that in front of me. I'm prepared to talk about that in 2 weeks when we return.
Okay. Is that what this legislation is that you're filing, though? Is that correct?
Where there are two pieces. We have the ordinance that will be on first reading tomorrow night, and then we have this resolution, which is the action plan. So this is our funding for the Community Development Block Grant, the home program, the Emergency Solutions Grant for homelessness, and housing opportunities for persons with AIDS. So this one has the money tied to this final year of our 5-year consolidated plan. The assessment of fair housing is completely different and unrelated to this resolution.
I understand. Which one was the suspension of the rules was for, though?
The resolution so that we would have the benefit of the more detailed housing discussion before Budget and Finance at the next meeting.
Okay, so the housing one is the one that is being deferred. The housing plan resolution.
The report to HUD, yes.
Okay, I just want to be clear.
For one meeting.
Okay, about what we're deferring.
And then we will look forward to a discussion on the ordinance on the second reading for 833 while we defer 803 and do them both at once.
Right, but the other one, I want to make sure is different. You're saying this is the plan we use every year with the community. At one time it was community funds in it as well, right? Neighborhood funds?
Correct. The action plan, the resolution, is the funding for the current year for CDBG, home, ESG, and HOPWA. That is correct, Council Lady.
And is this the one that's being deferred? I'm so confused now.
Yes, 803 is, the resolution is being deferred to track in 2 weeks.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, I got you. All right, then thank you so much for that clarity. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Lady. The motion being made and seconded, all in favor of a one-meeting deferral for RS 803, please say aye. Our 803 is deferred for one meeting, and then the ordinance 833 we will have before us next time on second reading. Thank you. There being no further business before this committee, we are adjourned.
Great. We're in order. Hopefully the mics will cooperate. We'll begin with resolutions. RS 2017-790 authorizes the Director of Public Property to exercise an option agreement for the purchase of a flood-prone property at 3060 High Rigger Drive for Metro Water Department. And I have a letter from the sponsor to approve. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Hagar's here, so that's 13. Next is RS 2017-802, sponsors Allen and Elrod, authorizes SP Plus parking and the Metro Development and Housing Authority to construct and install an aerial encroachment at 147 Fifth Avenue North. Do I have a motion? It's been moved and seconded. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next are bills on second reading. BL 2017-803, sponsor Anthony Davis, Elrod, and Allen, authorizes Metro to abandon an existing water line and accept a new water line and a fire hydrant for property located at 0 Ward Avenue. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2017-804, sponsors Anthony Davis, Elrod, and others. This authorizes the acquisition of certain rights-of-way easements, drainage easements, temporary construction easements, and property rights by negotiation or condemnation for use in public projects for the Lytton Avenue sidewalk improvements. Been moved and seconded. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2017-805, sponsors Withers, Elrod, and others. Authorizes the acquisition of certain right-of-way easements, drainage easements, temporary construction easements, and property rights by negotiation or condemnation for use in public projects for purposes of the Sevier Street sidewalk improvements. Been moved and seconded. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2017-806, sponsors Allen, Elrod, and Cooper. This authorizes the acquisition of certain right-of-way easements, drainage easements, temporary construction easements, and property rights by negotiation or condemnation for use in public projects for purposes of the Gale Lane sidewalk improvements. Been moved and seconded. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2017-807, sponsors Rosenberg, Elrod, and others. This authorizes the acquisition of certain right-of-way easements, drainage easements, temporary construction easements, and property easements by negotiation or condemnation for use in public projects for the purpose of Bellevue Road sidewalk improvements. Have a letter from the sponsor to approve. It's been moved and seconded. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Seeing none against, that is recommended. Next is BL 2017-808, sponsors Anthony Davis, Elrod, and others. This approves an agreement between the Metro Department of Water and Sewage Services and Lincoln Management Investment Services, LLC, to provide public water service improvements. Been moved and seconded. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Now we're on bills on third reading. BL 2016-360, sponsor is Leonardo. This changes 10 acres from AR2A to SP zoning for property located at 3920 Stewart's Lane to permit uses as specified on the attached plan. I understand there's a substitute. Second substitute, Councilmember Leonardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to move the substitute, please.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of the second substitute? Any opposed?
And I'd request approval from the committee.
Okay. We have a request for approval. Been seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? Approved as substituted. Next is BL 2016-488, sponsor is Sledge, changes 0.14 acres from IWD to MUL zoning for property located at 1267 2nd Avenue South. Do I have a motion? It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, bill is recommended. Next is BL 2016-489, sponsor Sledge, changes 0.34 acres from IWD to MULA zoning for properties located at 1277 and 1285 2nd Avenue South. Been moved. Is there a second? Been moved and seconded. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2016-513, sponsors Wiener, Elrod, and others, amends the Metro Code pertaining to the Department of Water and Sewage Services. And I understand there's a substitute. Councilmember Wiener. Sherry. We're on your bill. Do you wish to tell us about the substitute or have someone else tell us about the substitute?
Yes, we need to get somebody from Metro Water to share the substitute.
Mr.
What happens when you talk to me while I'm trying to work?
Right.
Jim Snyder, Metro Water, but Rebecca Dawn is in the front, and she's going to answer that question.
Okay, there you go.
Am I on?
You're
okay.
on.
The substitute only addresses changes to chapter or title 15, not 17. Should we still address them here?
I think we can still ask those questions. If you don't mind, that would be helpful.
Okay. The substitute restores some of the original language of the code in reference to the Stormwater Management Committee. It was brought forth in a stakeholder group by a consulting engineer that they wanted the ability to basically, if we did not approve a plan for compliance with our chapter, that they can then bring that to the Stormwater Management Committee. And we decided to restore that section. The other substitute portion references the Tennessee Code annotated that has the ability to fine up to $5,000 for violations to the chapter.
Thank you. And so does that mean that we have the ability to fine up to $5,000? Good. Councilmember, thank you very much. Councilmember Mina Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to thank you all the sponsors and the people who cleaned up this act. It looks like used to be the authority was separated from public works and code administration. Seems like this second substitute and everything clean up and everything and delegate authority to all under Metro Stormwater, so it looks clean and nice, and I really appreciate your hard work, and thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments, all those in favor of the substitute? That was pitiful. Let's try that again. All those in favor of the substitute? Very good. Any opposed? All right, all in favor of the bill as substituted? Excellent. Thank you very much. Bill is recommended as substituted. Next is BL 2017-608, sponsors Hager, Roden, and others. Amends the Metro Code to establish distinct land uses for short-term rental property, owner-occupied, and short-term rental property not owner-occupied, and establishing a phase-out date in year 2021 for short-term rental property not owner-occupied. Councilmember Glover.
Actually, I think we need to have a motion to move before we can have discussion.
Okay.
Maybe I didn't hear that.
No, it has not been made. Would someone like to move approval?
Move.
All right. Councilmember
Mr.
Glover.
Jameson, so here's my question. We know the state is watching us, as they do frequently, and we have a committee that's in place to look at this and bring back a recommendation to the body. So do we, and sponsors, forgive me, but is this something we really need to be debating right now? Because if we pass this, are we not asking for the state to intervene on us probably before we want them to?
I think if we were to pass this prior to the ad hoc committee's full consideration, that's something that the state would consider in levying legislation preempting us possibly.
Okay, then Madam Chair, I'm going to vote no on this because I believe we need to let the committee do their work and then listen to what their recommendation would be. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Does the sponsor wish to speak? I'm waiting for you to push your button. I'll push your button. Hold on, now I can't find it. Hagar. Mr. Hagar.
All due respect to Councilman Glover, we're going to let the ad hoc committee work on this. So my position is I'm going to either continue it probably to the second meeting in September or October 3rd. Is that right, Mr. Jameson? October 3rd. Okay. So that's where we're going with it. Thank you.
Thank you. So
is that a move to defer?
that is.
Move to defer.
Thank you,
to
Councilman.
October 3rd. I hope that makes you happy, Councilman
I'm
Glover.
smiling.
You got Glover to smile. Good job. Councilmember O'Connell. I can't find anybody right now. You're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just do want to make sure procedurally with Mr. Jameson, we do have the sponsor has an appropriate number of deferrals that he can do this without jeopardizing where the bill is procedurally.
He can because it's a zoning bill.
All right, excellent. Thank you.
Zoning bills can be deferred many times. Is that correct? Correct. Okay, so we're good. Other questions? So we have a motion to defer to October 3rd. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Bill is deferred. Next is BL 2017-701, sponsors Karen Johnson, applies an urban design overlay district on various properties located along Moss Spring Drive and Blue Water Trace, approximately 540 feet west of Blue Water Drive, zoned AR2A and RS10. Let's see, I have a request to speak from Councilmember Johnson.
I'm not on the committee. I apologize. I shouldn't have done that. I only
Give me a
pushed that
second and
just
I'll
in
ask
case
for a
you
motion.
needed me.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, is there a motion? It's been moved and seconded, and now Councilmember Johnson, you're recognized.
I just asked for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Mina Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to ask planning staff a little question about this one. Could you tell me why did you recommend this approve an existing contextual overlay and difference of Council Lady Johnson's UDO? Main difference.
The difference between the contextual overlay and the UDO, or just
Yes,
the reason
yes.
for the disapproval of the UDO, or both? Okay. Well, the reason the UDO was recommended for deferral is because when the staff analyzed this, we looked at the block face of the streets surrounding the UDO and found that the UDO was somewhat inconsistent with the majority of the lots that were already built on those same block faces surrounding the UDO. you know, this is something that we typically do is we use the block face. So there was another UDO I think that you're aware of up in the Whites Creek area that's the same sort of analysis we did there. And then when we do infill subdivisions, we look at the lots on the same block face. Now, when we do infill subdivisions, the Planning Commission kind of has the ability to look at a wider area to determine if maybe a wider area is consistent with the development that's proposed. And so after the Planning Commission meeting, that's actually what we did. We've done sort of further analysis of this one in preparation for this meeting, and we found that if you go further out beyond the block face, that it gets more consistent. This UDO would be more consistent with the lots as you include more lots in the neighborhood. And so the point is we use our standard analysis for looking at UDOs, and that was our recommendation to the Planning Commission. And I think the Planning Commission had concerns about the tool itself, whether UDO versus SP was the right tool to use, and typically UDOs include more properties and might include that larger area that I just talked about. But this one was a more specific UDO for a smaller area, and I think that was the concern that the commission had. But if you look at this one, if you use a larger area to sort of compare to, then the UDO does get more consistent with the character of the larger area. And so that's how we came about and how the Planning Commission came about the recommendation. We used our standard sort of looking at the block face.
Thank you for the explanation. And I was watching a YouTube video of the planning meeting, and I think I understood why Planning Commission disapproved. However, looking at larger area and especially looking at each street, I think in this particular area, maybe UDO may not be right tool, but I think for this instance, I have to disagree with Planning Commissioner's recommendation, and I will support Council Lady Karen Johnson's approval for this particular bill. So I encourage every committee member to, agree with and approve this, disapprove the bill.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Withers. Oops, there are too many people. Hold on. Councilmember Withers.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I guess a couple of questions again to the planning staff and perhaps to the sponsor, but I'm somewhat familiar with this area. I had some friends that lived in that area and took a spin out there this weekend and went a little bit further to the north, closer to this particular site, as I was looking at the planning staff statements that, siting was predominant in the area, and I find that to be true closer to Hamilton Church Road, but as I got closer to this actual site, I found that there was some use of siding, but it was more incidental, and that brick and some of the materials and driveway placements, as outlined in the UDO, were what I found to be the predominant pattern in that immediate vicinity. And so I guess just two questions one question for staff is this sort of a UDO something that we could have like an off-the-shelf product for primarily brick type ranch neighborhoods? I mean, is this a product that we could apply to other neighborhoods? Because if so, I think that my Rosebank community and some other communities would be very, very interested in that, perhaps more so even than a contextual overlay, because folks that live in the brick neighborhoods really like that aspect and that building material and find that it adds a lot of value and consistency. And if this is something that we could apply to other areas, I would be interested in pursuing that. So I'll turn that question over to the staff.
I think we could. We've talked about that internally, whether we could establish sort of an off-the-shelf UDO for neighborhoods, and I don't know. I think we could. I don't know that the standards in this UDO would be that off-the-shelf UDO that we would use, but because of the number of UDOs that we've had requested, we've talked about that internally, and I think it's possible to come up with architectural standards that could apply countywide or case by case, but that get at the goals of what the council members are trying to do when they apply these UDOs. So I think we have talked about looking into that, and that's something that we can continue to do and try to see if we can establish a sort of off-the-shelf UDO similar to the contextual overlay.
Well, thank you, Mr. Lehman. If I could, I would like to get on y'all's calendar to talk about that a little bit more urgently, because we are, losing some of our brick homes, which are great materials, and single-story buildings are great for aging in place. There are just a lot of assets, I think, that really do meet not only neighbor concerns, but concerns from Nashville Next as it pertains to preserving neighborhood character and aging in place. So if we could make that be a standard that neighborhoods could apply for, similar to the contextual overlay, I'd be very interested in that. So having said that, I guess a question maybe for the sponsor is, I know there's some concern about applying zoning to a couple of specific parcels, and is that in fact a form of spot zoning? I'm sensitive to that. I'm wondering whether the sponsor would be interested, or planning staff would be interested in, leaving this bill as pending legislation for now, but maybe going ahead and applying that to the larger area in order to resolve that issue of singling out a couple of parcels.
Thank you. I will come back around to the sponsor and let her answer that question. Thank you for your discussions. Councilmember Glover.
Well, actually, I'm going to kind of follow up on that. And Madam Chair, if I may, I would like to address the sponsor, if I have your permission.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, you do.
So I know that you had a number of people speak on behalf of this. And typically, when there's a disapproval, I know we have good conversation about it. But I think you did your research, and I think that you have the support in your community that says they want to do this. Am I correct, sponsor?
Correct.
Okay. Well, I'm going to just say what I always believe. Council Lady Johnson knows her district better than anybody else in her district does, as I do mine. And so I'm going to respect what your wishes are and go with you on this one, because I think you have done your job.
Thank you,
Council Lady.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sledge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had initially thought, I'm kind of going to echo what everybody else has said. I had initially thought I was a little iffy regarding the Planning Commission's recommendation, but I did want to, and I think Councilor Johnson has made a good case for this. There was something that deeply disturbed me from what she had showed me regarding the treatment of a resident in that area, and I didn't know if the council member wanted to go into detail on that or not, but it has influenced the way, I just want to make public, it's influenced the way I want to vote on this, and I will be supporting the UDO, but I wanted the council lady, the sponsor, to have the opportunity to go into more detail on the way one of her residents, her constituents, was treated during this process, just so people understood kind of the context. So, but if she wants to or not, it's fine. It's just, that is why I will be supporting this UDO.
Thank you. Councilmember O'Connell, I keep trying to come to you and you're talking to other people.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Chair, I would rudely interrupt them were you to recognize me at the appropriate time. But,
good to know.
I think on this particular bill, I am in support of the sponsor, and one of the important reasons why I think this speaks to why sometimes council staffing is so important to us. It's probably known to members of this committee and the body at large that I'm frequently skeptical of bills that come with a unanimous disapproval from planning. However, in this case, I think the fact that we have a planning liaison on our staff and the careful work that was done by him in collaboration with not just Council Lady Johnson, but also the members of her community to understand, interpret, and make a best recommendation for community preferences here really does speak to how we are able to do this work, not just in a way that completely goes against larger considerations of community plans or so forth, but actually very much with the same level of professionalism and collaboration that is seen by so many members of the planning staff and commission. And I am here in support of the council lady's bill. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I was going to recognize the planning table to speak just to the technical aspect of expanding UDO, which was not actually what you asked, but just to clarify why we can't expand the existing one if the council member wanted to, and to address what you had specifically asked, and then I will let the council member respond to that. So I'll start with the planning table.
Correct. I believe there was a question as to whether this existing UDO could have the boundaries of it expanded to include additional properties in Council Lady Johnson's district. And the answer to that is at this point, no, this particular UDO could not be expanded. It's been noticed and it included certain parcels, and legally it cannot be expanded to include additional parcels. That would take a completely different application.
Thank you. You can adjust inward, but you can't adjust outward.
Correct.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And Councilmember Johnson, if you want to respond to anything, I would simply ask to speak to zoning issues. I become uncomfortable when we talk about personality conflicts. So if you want to speak further on zoning, and then I have one comment as well. Thank you.
I will keep it brief, just to answer Councilman Sledge's question. That particular issue is still in the court system, and so because of that, I don't feel comfortable going into detail about what is occurring between that particular neighbor and the developer.
Thank you. And I will add, I also, I voted on this on the Planning Commission, and I voted against it at Planning Commission because the zoning is, the underlying policy is neighborhood maintenance, and the information that we had at the time was that this was not consistent with the existing neighborhood. So after the public hearing, I drove out there to see the existing neighborhood. I have a sheet of paper with all my notes, and I believe that the context that felt appropriate to me also contained mostly homes that are appropriate with the UDO. So I think it is consistent with neighborhood maintenance, so I will be changing my vote. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approval? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2017-702, sponsor is Scott Davis, changes 1.66 acres from RS5 to RM20A zoning on properties located at 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 Lucille Street and Lucille Street unnumbered. Do I have a motion? Been moved and seconded. Councilmember Davis, do you wish to speak? No. Seeing no other discussion, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2017-719, sponsor Scott Davis, changes 0.23 acres from R6 to SP zoning on property located at 2407 Brasher Avenue, approximately 140 feet northeast of Strauss Avenue, to permit an accessory detached recording studio in addition to all uses permitted by the R6 zoning district. Do I have a motion? Is there a second? Was there a second? We need a second for discussion. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded for discussion. And Councilmember Mina Johnson will begin the discussion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to ask planning table the reason for this approval, and if you would speak a little bit about home occupation aspect as well.
Sure. Okay, in regards to home occupations, the zoning code does allow for home occupations within residential zoning districts. However, there are limitations on those home occupations in regards to customers or clients coming to the home, and that is not permitted. So this would not fall under the category of a home occupation in that it would allow for clients coming to the home. In regards to why the Planning Commission recommended disapproval, it was determined by the Planning Commission that this was an inappropriate use of an SP, in that SPs are intended to provide for a context-sensitive solution to zoning issues. Additionally, commercial use is not consistent with the land use policy for the area, which is a neighborhood maintenance policy. And further, the Planning Commission felt that the introduction of this type of use is best considered on a county-wide basis and not on an individual lot-by-lot basis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I remember this was lots of proponents came to speak at the public hearing. However, this, I think, the Planning Commission public hearing was held in February. There was quite a few, actually 6 or 7 members from a community came out and spoke against it. Precisely the reason, because SP is not appropriate to allow this kind of development, such as allowing commercial activity as a detached building. So, I I understand this will be I have great respect to the district council member. I try to help neighbors, and he's always look after the neighbors, and that's no question. However, just using and approving this one particular zone change using SP, we are facing a dangerous, creating dangerous precedent. It's not like a typical zone change, but also allowing special home occupation with client coming into residentially zoned area. So if we allow this zone change under SP, we in every single zoning district and every single neighborhood will be facing with commercial activity coming into your area. So I think it would be more appropriate to take a look at a district-wide change other than using SP, because if we approve this SP, maybe next thing it will be barbershop in somebody's neighborhood. Or, pet store in somebody's neighborhood. So for that reason, I do oppose this zone change, and I encourage the committee members as well to approve this zone change.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember O'Connell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think on this one, again, this is not sort of an ordinary land use site design kind of review. This one, I have had too many of my constituents who have been very concerned specifically about the short-term rental regulatory approach under the notion that the zoning code specifically tailors use. And I think in this kind of scenario, what we have said, what my constituents have said repeatedly is that just as they do not prefer to have miniature hotels operating on multiple sides of their homes when they were buying into a residential neighborhood, similarly, I think people would be very surprised to learn that they could just go get an SP and suddenly have a business district where one did not exist. Those of my constituents who are living in mixed-use neighborhoods do so typically by design and by intent, and those who have a neighborhood that transitions tend to go through a very large community discussion. It's very difficult for me to support this based on where we are in the overall citywide conversation right now about what is good for neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Withers.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I also have to go on record at the beginning with all due respect to my colleague, and I know what he's doing to help his constituents, and I appreciate that effort. I can't support this bill at this time. But if I can address the planning table again, I do personally believe that as Music City that we can look at this through a Nashville Next lens of what makes Nashville unique and what is going to support potentially home-based businesses or things that are unique to Nashville. This is something I would like to maybe take up again. We've had some discussions like that a few years ago that didn't quite pan out. But I think there's enough interest. I think we've got the Music Business Coalition or through the mayor's office where I think this would be a good thing to put on our collective agendas to talk about countywide, particularly for folks who are operating a recording studio in the place where they live. We could say it's an owner-occupied use, which we also have with historic bed and breakfasts in neighborhoods. So I just want to say that I can't support this bill for this one specific application. I think we'll have any number of them, and then it's up to the council member and how good of arguments can you make, and I think you end up with a lot of subjectivity there. But this is another thing that I would like to see the planning staff work with council and maybe some of the business interest groups for the music business specifically to see if there's not a way to accommodate this on a countywide basis with some performance standards. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Scott Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank the committee for listening to this, but there's something I want to point out. I keep hearing council members talk about, my constituents don't approve of it. You know, Freddie O'Connell, a great guy, good friend of mine, Camp Obama veteran just like myself, has a beautiful family, super intelligent. And he's doing what he's supposed to. His constituents don't like this. Well, I want to submit in the record tomorrow night or tonight, I don't see a sergeant at arms, I have a petition for just about everybody on that street, and at public hearing, there was no one in opposition, but I think I counted 30 people that live in my district in support. Now, I always try, I'm not perfect, but I try not to be a hypocrite. I stand up here and I support big business. I support businesses in everyone's neighborhoods. And I try to have a old saying, what I do for the business community, I will do for my constituents, or attempt to do it. And this is my constituent who has operated this business with no complaints over 25 years. The Auto Diesel College, just in that overlay, is allowed to have a recording studio and to make more noise, even though I know it's different. But I can go into anybody's district right now and find a recording studio. I mean, the big one, Big and Rich, that one dude downtown off of West End, you know, didn't care and just did that. And it was before a lot of us were on the council, but they're allowed to do it. And I get tired of the people that have something to get away with this, and the little people like my constituent to do it. When in East Nashville do you have all the neighbors in support? And what has happened, people outside of my district, outside, I want to reference that again, are going after this like this has something to do with short-term rental. If we weren't talking about short-term rentals, we would not have opposition from outside. So when is it that I can, and I always look at this, when I have bills that I have large amounts of community opposition, I punt the ball, defer, get it out of here. You know, I do that constantly. But I have a bill that I have community support. This is my district, and I rarely go on this my district tirade. But when I have people outside trying to affect the judgment, and many times I have supported stuff that maybe I wouldn't want to do it in my district, but since that district council member and their constituents want it, I stood there, held my nose, and voted with them. And I'm just asking for the same thing. This is Music City, and we are fighting to keep a 25-year-old recording studio out of our neighborhoods when the neighbors have no complaints. Yes, that's his home occupation, but there are thousands of folks in this city that have that occupation. And I do have barbershops that are in my district. And I have other forms, but law firms, insurance agents. I don't know if they've been operating home businesses forever. And this is the way we look at it. And I know that, you know, this is difficult, and we need to address this on a countywide basis. I agree with my colleagues on that. You know, it's been a difficult subject that we've tackled, but this is the only way I can make my citizen compliant. My citizen wants to be compliant with the law, and his neighbors want him to be, and that's why instead of fighting him, they're here supporting him. And there'll be more here tomorrow night. So I want every council person to remember, you know, if you vote differently, that's okay. We're still friends, and I will still support you. But you have to remember, you know, just because you don't want it in your neighborhood, you know, I will vote with you if you don't want this. If someone in your neighborhood brings an SP and you're against it, it's your district, you know it better than I do. You know what I mean? And I respect that. And I'm just asking for the same respect here. This gentleman has went through and talked to every neighbor within a certain mile radius. I mean, he went above the call of duty. His neighbors all showed up. And notice the STR opponents weren't there on public hearing night, and that's another thing that we're looking at. Let's not lump this into that category. This has nothing to do with it. And sometimes we have to remember, who is it that elects us? It is my people. These are the people that put me in office to support them. So I'm going to do what they want. And hopefully they will let other council people know that, hey, we're asking for this. If you live somewhere else, we respect your opinion and we love you, but we live on this street. They are surrounded by this recording. So we've been this gentleman's neighbor for the last 5, 10, 15, 25 years. And that's what we're asking for. And I can't sit here and be a hypocrite and vote for large budgets for hotels, MDHA, Gaylord, or other kinds of music venues without sitting here fighting this hard for my constituent who lives and votes in the 5th District, and his neighbors that are saying, we're fine. They're here today, you know, wanting to talk to the planning committee members afterwards, being patient. And I'm sorry, Chair, for going long, but I have to do this for a gentleman that lives and works in my neighborhood and has been a long-time constituent. If I didn't fight this hard for him or for his neighbors to do what they need to do, and he's not harming anybody, I cannot do the same thing for other entities that we all so passionately fight for. And I thank everyone for listening, and please support my constituent, Al Brasher. Please, he needs your help.
Thank you. Councilmember Fabian Bedney.
Thank you, Chair. So I saw this article on Rolling Stone magazine that they were talking about how in Nashville people are using short-term rentals to have music venues on residential properties. So I guess I want to turn around and say, if we don't pass this, and then we don't get to control what happens with short-term rentals, and we just opening the door for people that don't get to come through the legal process to just sidestep the process and get a short-term rental and open a recording studio, a music venue on a private property. And so I was just thinking out loud here, asking about it. I mean, Jameson, will they be able to do it for a short-term rental?
No, the STRP bill is built for residential applications. So if you're talking about somebody who's creating a space for a photography studio or music studio, that's a commercial operation. It's not what STRP was designed to do. Now, those could still be prohibited by virtue of the base zoning, but not by virtue of the short-term rental. That just wouldn't apply.
So they couldn't, I mean, okay, I got you. I guess I see the people taking any opportunity to sidestep the rules because I've seen it happening so much in the last year. So I was just wanting to double check that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember,
Just going to say that Council Lady Murphy had sensitized the codes department to that issue previously. I know they're keeping an eye on this company, AVO, I think it was called. So they're looking for the opportunity to enforce codes restrictions if necessary.
Councilmember Syracuse.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I share the sentiments of my colleagues who said that we probably should have more of a countywide discussion about this. I think it's going to yield some very interesting opinions from folks about commercial businesses in the middle of a residential neighborhood. But whereas I did support Councilman Davis on this on second reading, I have to now look at what I have coming ahead, which is the same exact thing in one of my neighborhoods in Donaldson, which is an SP in the middle of a residential neighborhood. In this case, it's for a hairstylist. At the end of the day, what I have to be consistent and not be a hypocrite about is that the SP is just an incorrect use in this regard. And so I need to stay consistent on this, and unfortunately, I can't support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Sledge. You should be on. You were on. There you go.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to support Councilman Davis in this. I've got a couple of reasons why. When I live in an area in my neighborhood that has always mixed work and home, one street over from me, we used to do this. I know people are talking about tools. We used to do this. We used to do this through PUDs. And so the street right next to mine, a woman had a PUD for a hair salon in a residence for decades. And the only reason that I knew about it is because she passed away a couple of years ago. And in order for her widower to sell that property and be able to move, we had to remove the PUD, which is what this body did. And thank you all for supporting that. But otherwise, the only people who knew that there was a business there were the people who went to the hair salon. And clearly they wanted to go there. I've had a recording studio across the street from me the whole time. My wife and I have lived in Wedgwood, Houston. We have had no issues with it. And I know that there is this thought that we need to have this district-wide or county-wide discussion. But I think if you recall on second reading, we have had that discussion again and again and again. And it either never starts because there is opposition from various parts of town, but no consensus. or it goes through and it fails. And I will say the tool is creative, but I think sometimes you have to be creative if you're going to start this conversation. And I would encourage members to think about this, and I'll say the same thing tomorrow night. We have got to start thinking about the cost of living in this city. And if it costs substantially more to live in the urban core, and we are committed to what gets termed sometimes cynically as affordable living, then we got to figure out what we're going to do to make people can live and work near the same place or maybe in the same place. We have done some good things there. I think we have created some good live-work overlays. But we're going to have to do more. And if you're thinking about this from a preservation standpoint, I know this doesn't apply to Councilman Davis's particular instance, but we're going to start losing what we call contributing structures in our districts because they're not going to be able to be used differently. And we've been able to save historic and contributing structures over the years because we were thoughtful enough to change the use because we said there was value to that. If we're going to put value in bricks and mortar, we ought to be putting value in people. And the last thing I'll say is this is a recording studio, and I think if anybody's been in anybody's home that has a recording studio, and let's be real, they're all over Nashville. The studio's the nicest room in the house. I think we all know that. This is probably not going to be an issue for the neighbors who clearly support it. So I appreciate Councilman Davis starting this conversation again, and I'm going to support him.
Thank you. Councilmember Glover.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Jameson, let's go back in time just a bit. So you had a bill when you were on this council to let businesses operate in neighborhoods. I don't remember the bill number, nor do I remember the exact specifics, but tell me a little bit about that, please, sir.
So as the planning table acknowledged, there is a home occupation bill now that essentially allows you to have a business within your residence, but it cannot allow visitors to it. So you could be a CPA and you do your work in your living room and nobody's going to be offended. You have to get the home occupation permit. So the bill that was introduced that I was sponsor of in 2010 or 11
somewhere, yeah,
was to allow businesses to operate where you could have individuals appear at your house. So once that door was opened, we had to come up with fairly rigid restrictions on it. Could you have signage? How many people could you have at your time? Where would they park? So pages and pages of the restrictions. And as much as we tried to add restrictions that were assuring to neighborhood organizations and others that were not, that were nervous about that provision, it did not prove sufficient enough, and it failed pretty remarkably.
It failed. It went down in flames.
Absolutely. I think there were.
So anyway, I'm bringing this up because now I want to ask the next question. STRPs, the taxes they pay, is it residentially based or is it business based? Is it a hotel tax or is it a home tax?
It's a type of hotel tax.
Oh, it's a type of hotel tax. So in other words, we've already opened the door for businesses to operate in our communities. Is that a pretty fair assessment?
Well, yes. I mean, we're clearly still in the midst of adjusting the STRP legislation.
And I get that piece of it, but I also have to say that there are recording studios. In fact, my wife and I did a show we were syndicated on, and we did a recording studio. We actually recorded the show inside of a residential area. And so, yeah, they're everywhere. And so what I wanted to try to understand was what you were trying to accomplish with your bill versus what we've already done with the STRPs, because we don't limit the number of cars, I don't think, do we, on the number of people who can park if they're coming in and doing an STRP for this weekend?
No.
We require them to meet the parking requirements that are already for the
But we're working on it, right? Is that fair? We're trying to figure this out, or what?
In response to your specific question, they are required to meet the Title 17 parking requirements. There's no specific to the STRP limit, but they are otherwise required.
Okay, and so, Madam Chair, if I may, because I would like to ask the sponsor of this, because it is his district, would there be, if you will allow the question, Madam?
Sure.
Would there be additional cars that would actually create a problem on this street if we supported you on this venture?
I will let you answer briefly.
I say no additional cars because for 25 years, the neighbors, if I may, you know, the neighbors that are in support live next door, same street around the corner. They wouldn't have signed this and came out in support if the parking was an issue. This is a one gentleman operation. I mean, he might have one person in there recording, or maybe two people, and his property is pretty big for the area. So it's not causing a problem so far, you know, over 25 years. I think what's happened, because this area is getting hotter, that, you know, possibly, you know, we all get those letters in the mail, that, you know, this tactic of, we're going to call codes on you because you won't sell me this property for $125,000.
And yes, Madam Chair, he answered it in the first 3 seconds there. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Anyway, so I will close with this. The thing that bothered me about the STRPs is what I argued with, is that we were opening businesses up. We've done that, okay? We've done it. And when you have a case-by-case situation like this, and there's not the neighborhood, I guess, arguing against it or coming out against it, I'm going to support the council member here, because I'll say the same thing to Councilman Davis that I said to Council Lady Johnson. They know their district better than I do, and so I'm going to support them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember O'Connell, did you want to speak again, or is that, okay. Hang on. You're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think this is the hardest part of this discussion. I am not in any way saying that I know Councilman Davis's district better than he does. I think the hardest part about this is that I unfortunately know how too much maybe about the legislative process and what we allow in any one district, the spillover effects that has, right? So I would say that in this case, it's not just my listening to my constituents about something in his district, it's my listening to my constituents and understanding the side effects that can occur legislatively. I would love to have this group of people that is now serving together look at the prospect for a countywide solution for home-based businesses. You know, if it's been operating for 25 years, that's one of those things, and has the support of neighbors. The other concern I have, however, and this is the hardest part also about legislating, is how the listening process happens and transitions through to leading. You know, I'm sitting here looking at an email I received from a property owner in his district that every single one of us had the opportunity to vote on, who is Nigel Hodge, who now serves on the Industrial Development Board as somebody we supported. He is someone who did speak at the Planning Commission against this. He is someone who does own property very nearby, and he is someone that has asked me specifically, I don't know if he has asked all of our colleagues, this was an email sent just to me, to oppose this bill, right? This is one of the hardest parts about this. This is not just the STR community. This is a property owner very nearby who is not, you know, even with the signatures of support, I think the reasons that Mr. Hodge lays out here are very plain as to why he opposes it, and some of them are the same reasons that it's very, very difficult for me to find a pathway to support here that is not one that takes into account all districts with equity. Because I know that if I were to bring something on behalf of a given constituent, even if he had the support or she had the support of multiple neighbors, whether it was a recording studio, a hairstyle facility, you know, a salon of some kind, it would be a very, very difficult community conversation. It might not have been particularly difficult in Mr. Davis's district, but I am looking at a note of opposition from someone in his district. And again, it's very consistent with the types of things that I know are concerns specifically of multiple constituents I've had that say, look, we live in residential neighborhoods. There might be some other tool that I'm unaware of right now, and maybe Mr. Jameson or planning staff could speak to that, that would allow this to come into compliance. And again, I'd rather not shut down something that's supported there, but then there's also this question of, all right, you know, how did we get to this point where compliance must occur right now? Maybe there was somebody willing to call codes, I don't know. I feel like this is, again, though, not if we're going to allow this and kind of bring out of the shadows some of the other things, I think that we should re-engage. I think it's our obligation to re-engage in that conversation about how to do home-based businesses successfully countywide. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hagar.
I guess my question is directed to Mike James, planning. I understand the home business bill where you can have a business at your home and you can have one employee. Am I correct?
That's correct.
All right. Do they pay any difference in taxes or anything like that?
Do you mean, do they pay a commercial rate versus a residential? Yeah, they do pay commercial rate.
Okay. And then my next question is, you talk about a countywide discussion. Is there any way that we can do something countywide where a person could get like a permit on a year-to-year basis to do this type of business that Councilman Davis wants in his district?
One of your colleagues is working on that ordinance currently.
Okay, that's what I want to know. Thank you.
Councilmember Hurt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, what Councilman Haggard asked is really addressing my concern. Also, I didn't know if nothing was said about the noise ordinance, but I assume that that wouldn't be any kind of a problem with there.
The noise ordinance would apply.
Okay.
Councilmember Withers.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for recognizing me again. I'm going to follow up with Councilmember O'Connell's line of reasoning. Is this the strategy that now we tell every recording studio that happens to get turned into codes is that they should go to their council member and request an SP? I mean, is that now the strategy? And would not the strategy simply be better countywide to figure out if this is something that our community supports, which I think for recording studios and music businesses in particular, there's a plausible case that that's true. And if so, is there a better way to do that? Perhaps through a permitting process, perhaps maybe through an overlay, but I like the permitting process better because one of the things about an SP is that is permanent zoning on that property. It doesn't follow that person. It follows the land. And so you have permanently changed the zoning in a residential neighborhood to this specific use. And that won't necessarily always follow I'm sure, a very nice gentleman that lives there. So that permanence of the SP is one of the things that I'm concerned about. And I'm just concerned that this does set a precedent where every person with a recording studio just has to go to their council member. It's going to be a disapproved bill. We're going to need 27 votes. How many of your neighbors are in support or not? And is that really, an effective and efficient way to tackle this problem, which is something, again, for recording studios in particular, that I think that we can actually resolve in this county. So I have a great deal of sympathy and empathy for that constituent. I respect what Councilmember Davis is doing. I support the ends, but not the means.
Thank you. Councilmember Weiner.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak, given that I'm not on the committee. I have a question for Mr. Jameson. We spoke earlier and heard that an SP is an incorrect tool to use for this particular application. Does that mean that if it's passed, it's unenforceable? To what extent is it the incorrect tool?
I think the point being made was that, first, with respect to Councilman Bedney's concerns about STRPs being used for this application, that would not be a correct application because that is purely a residential application, not commercial. Whether or not an SP can be applied to allow a business purpose in a residential setting, that's a judgment call for the council. It has hit I think repeated objections. 4 separate ordinances have made attempts to introduce essentially that on a more comprehensive basis, and all 4 have failed.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councilmember Glover, do you wish to speak again? All right, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. All right, so Mr. Jameson, let me go back because I'm pretty simple. Let me try to understand. STRPs pay a commercial tax, but yet that's a residential use.
It's an accessory or perhaps soon to be a special exception use for not owner occupied, but yes.
Okay, so that's, well, I'll keep my comments to myself, but I mean, we're mincing words here. The challenge that I have is when we agreed to the STRPs, it bothered me because I felt like we were letting businesses in. One thing I don't have a problem with on this particular bill is the fact that we're not adding parking spaces. We're not coming and digging up the property. We're not doing construction. We're letting somebody who has a business, apparently, that's been operating there for a number of years, we're letting them continue to do their business and try to follow the law. Now, have I missed something on that? No?
No, sir.
Okay. So while it may be, quote, permanent zoning, and with all due respect, while it may be permanent zoning, the next council member, if they decide they don't want it there, they can overturn that. You know, I think we did that in the last session, if I remember correctly, Mr. Jameson, where as a council member, I can bring zoning up whether the owner likes it or doesn't like it.
That is correct.
And so I think as I've listened to the discussion, it is further, I'm more solid in the way I'm going to vote now because I think we have to be consistent across the board. And so thank you, Chair, for allowing and indulging me.
Certainly. Councilmember Davis, you have 2 minutes. Whoops. Maybe. Now you do.
Thank you, Chair. This is an owner-occupied business, and I'm not going to add any more parking. We have no issues in noises. And to address the gentleman who owns rental property in the district but lives in Councilman Withers' district. So the gentleman that has an issue about it, as well-respected and a man of means as he is, Mr. Nigel is in Withers' district. He is a constituent of Mr. Withers, not of Councilman Davis. And I think his tenant does not have an issue with it, because I'm not 100% sure, but I'll be clear tomorrow night. The person that's renting that property from him signed this in support, because obviously his tenant may not be having an issue, but the landlord does. And if and once again, I have to back my constituent. And once again, this is an owner-occupied, and most of us have no issue with owner-occupied businesses in their neighborhoods. And once again, I'm going to remind, there's a lot of barbershops and a lot of recording studios in neighborhoods that we all love and care about those constituents, but it's up to the individual council member to support it or not support it. Like a lot of us have said just recently, Mr. Glover said, if you don't like it in your district, you don't have to do it. If this person did, if the last council person did something and you don't like it, you can overturn it because you are the council person for that area. And I think you have more important things to do inside your districts than to worry about something that I have clear and strong neighborhood support for. And love the planners. The planning commission works their butt off. They're there all night long some nights, and they work extra hours, even on the weekends. Carrie Logan has called me on a Saturday and like, Carrie, go home. We know how hard they work, and they're underpaid. We know that, you know, but those are the people that put me in office. And, you know, I have to listen to them. So love the planners. They work super hard, but we have to agree to disagree right now, and I have to back my neighborhood. So time is up. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilmember Leonardo.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate you allowing me to speak, even though I'm not a member of this committee. Being born and raised in East Nashville, I'm familiar with Lid Shaw, and you know, we sit around here all the time and talk about, all I hear is how can we protect against gentrification? Well, he's a product and a victim of this. Until the house next door was worth $500,000, Lid Shaw was never a problem. And we have to figure out how to have a balance with that. He is right beside the Diesel College. Right beside the Diesel College. There's no problems with that. There's a daycare behind him, and I have to agree with Councilmember Davis in the fact that if you see all the people that showed up that night, all the positive emails to that effect, there's got to be a remedy to protect everyone from gentrification. He was there first. It's owner-occupied. It's a carriage house in the back, and he's loved by the community. I don't see how in the world or why we shouldn't approve something like this when there's overwhelming community support. So I am in support of Mr. Shaw and what he's done in the community and what he continues to do, and I would be voting for approval, and I would encourage you to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Mina Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The point I want to make is specific zoning and land use policy. Because short-term rental, this is a usage and permit. But this specific plan zoning is basic fundamental zone change. If you allow one specific, one type of business under specific zone change, we will be opening up the all usage in every single district, disregard of land use and community plan and T2, T3, and Nashville Next. We all participated and make to see how we're going to grow next 25 years. So it will disregard by allowing this one spot zoning. That's why I think this usage of this specific zoning on this particular property is wrong. Maybe we could come up with a permit process like a short-term rental, and I think we could come up with a county-wide solution. However, I strongly believe using specific zoning to allow one particular type of business in one particular parcel is wrong usage of zoning land use policy. As for, thank you.
Councilmember Hurt.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me this opportunity again. I'm confused, or I have a problem, because it seems like we can vacillate from council person to council person each time someone take that office. If they want to change, they have the right to overturn, and then the next one comes can have the right to overturn what they overturned. So to me, it just seems like it's a little bit too much to be able to vacillate. If they're going to allow this project to be done, then we need to do it and stand by the property owner who has been granted this opportunity. I do understand. My question earlier was about, is there an appropriate zoning that can allow for this project to be done? And I thought that Councilman Hager may have addressed it when he was asking about a permit. But there obviously has to be something that can be done that can accomplish both things and allow this to happen, because we do know that there are recording studios in other parts of Nashville, because there's one on Jefferson Street, and it has been, and it's inside of, I guess it's mixed use all around, but it was originally a residential property. And I do think that the land use, and I do have a problem going against planning. So I feel like I'm being pulled from one end to the other. So I don't know if this is something that legal can do, or how can we come away with something to accomplish both?
Thank you. I mean, I think this is partly born out of people thinking outside the box and trying to think, how can we make this happen? I think some of the discussion has given us some options of maybe a permit that also involves a public hearing and an ordinance process, so that we can make sure that neighbors do approve of it. That sort of sounds like some of the information that's coming out of here. I have two more council members, and then we're having a lot of repeats, so we may cut this conversation off at some point. Council Member Kobe Sledge.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll be very brief. I know we've been having what I think is a pretty good discussion, but I know there's been a lot talked about precedent and permanence. Nothing is permanent. If it were permanent, then I wouldn't have had like 80 zoning bills in the first 2 years. So I think we have to take into account, does this go against what planning's recommending? Yes. Does it go against probably what Nashville Next looked at? Yes. I think if that determines your vote, then you would vote against this. But if you're talking about permanence or precedent, what we do here is not doing either, because nothing we do here is going to be permanent. This thing could change in 1 year or 10. And then when we talk about precedent, yeah, this is super, like I said, this is pretty creative, but I don't see us getting inundated as district council members with SPMUs for recording studios. I'm just not seeing it. And I would be interested, and I'm not saying that we have to go back to the sponsor necessarily, Madam Chair, but it's just been mentioned, it's 25 years, and then this guy all of a sudden needs this rezoning. I would like to know if there was some preceding action that more or less forced this person's hand. But that's all. That's all I got.
Councilmember Brett Withers, are you up again? Okay.
Thank you for recognizing me for the third time, Madam Chair. We're having a great discussion in our city about gentrification and trying to work with our neighbors who've been here a long time to keep them here, and I'm sensitive to that. What I'm going to go back to again, Nashville Next raised, even frankly in the short-term rental discussion, raised that issue of how we look at live-work relationships and how we try to do that. One of the things, I mean, certainly as a district council member, I get phone calls from builders frequently saying, you know, Councilmember Withers, you need to let me put 4 or 5 houses on this lot because there's an elderly couple that's been there a long time and they have medical bills, and you need to accommodate that and take care of these neighbors who have been there and they need a certain amount of income. And my response to them is that I have a responsibility to provide equal protection under the law, and I want to be really cognizant to the neighbor down the street that if their medical condition is different, or if they've been, you know, I can't base my judgment on zoning based on a medical condition, based on how long someone has lived there. There are concerns that I have about making decisions that are arbitrary, capricious, or potentially illegal. I think we just need to have a countywide discussion about how we accommodate this type of a need, and that is more or less equal to all, equal opportunity to all, and that is a better way to go about it. So again, this is not about any commentary on this particular neighbor or Councilmember Davis, who's always creative with trying to work with his constituents, and I often support him on that. But I do disagree with Councilmember Sledge. Zoning is permanent, at least until the time that we change our minds again, but otherwise it's permanent, and I simply just don't support this process for achieving that end. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Murphy.
Mike, can you give us a brief, very brief, if possible, background and some information on the constitutionality of spot zoning?
Brief, well, the Tennessee State Constitution allows through the state legislature, allows local governments to provide zoning regulations as they see fit. When they create spot zoning, that's typically considered inappropriate by most zoning entities and local governments, primarily because it creates inequities between the value of housing when we do subsequent tax appraisals and land use requirements. It becomes very difficult for enforcement purposes, codes administration, zoning administrations to enforce across a zebra or Swiss cheese landscape. So it's generally frowned upon at the state and local level.
Thank you.
Good question. Councilmember Haywood.
After listening to quite an extensive dialogue, I just want to stand in support of Councilmember Davis's bill, and I strongly urge everyone else to be supportive of the bill. Thank you.
You, Councilmember Glover, you up again?
Call the question.
Call the question.
Mr. Jameson, are we allowed to do that?
You're the last one in the queue.
Call the question. Well, I was trying to make it that way. Call the question.
It worked. All right, so we've had a robust discussion. I appreciate all the thoughts and hope that we will continue with some of the ideas that have come here. That being said, I believe we may need a show of hands for a vote. So it has been moved and seconded for approval. All those.
Call the question first.
Okay, vote on call the question. Well, you were the last one in the queue. Do we need to vote?
You were the last one in the queue.
Okay.
There's somebody to speak. So you can go to the vote.
Let's just vote. Let's get this done. We got other things to vote on. All those in favor, please raise your hand high and hold it there. In favor of the SP change, the bill as written.
I keep them up.
Keep your hands up. All those in favor of allowing the SP use, if you just said you were going to vote, I'm expecting to see your hand up. Okay, 1,
4, 5. I count 5.
Do you? Really? I count 4.
Did you raise your hand?
No, I was just,
Oh,
that was
okay.
illustrative.
I count 4 out there.
Okay. Opposed?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Okay, we lost somebody. Thank you. Good discussion. I'm sure we will do it again tomorrow. Abstentions. All those abstaining. That's where the other one went. Thank you for pointing that out.
But it was an abstention.
All right. Next is BL 2017-721, sponsors Wiener, Hagar, and others. Amends the Metro Code of Laws pertaining to traffic impact studies. Is there a motion? Any discussion? Councilmember Wiener, do you want to speak on this? Oops, wrong. You're recognized.
Thank you so much. This came about, and I'll be extremely brief, this came about when we were concerned that there were some loopholes out there that were allowing developers not to have to get a traffic impact study. And the concern was that we were bringing in an inordinate number of cars into areas that maybe shouldn't have that great density. And so to that end, we started talking to the planning department and Public Works, and one thing led to another. So we found numerous things that we needed to look at in terms of the density of a neighborhood that would trigger a traffic impact study, and that's what you have in this bill, and I would just appreciate your support so we can be a little bit more mindful of the traffic that we are bringing about.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Hagar.
Yeah, I just want to let everybody know about this bill too. As co-sponsor, what happened to me was they had a piece of property that was already zoned MUL. They put 110 apartments back on the lake. It goes through a residential neighborhood. And when I called about the traffic impact study, they said, well, we waived it. And I said, why did y'all waive it? Well, they waived it for the developers. So that was another reason when I talked to Council Lady Weiner, I said, this has got to stop because we should have been involved in that conversation. And I got a lot of backlash from the community about it because we didn't have a traffic impact study. So that's the reason I ask everybody's support for this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Mina Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to thank all the sponsors of the bill. It's really timely and it's well thought out and really appreciated. And I do have a quick question about a waiver and traffic engineer. It says if there was evidence that a traffic study is not needed, and if the developer bring up such data or a record to show those studies needed, a traffic engineer could give a waiver. So could you give me in that process, and actually who exactly the traffic engineer? Is it the Public Works traffic engineer? So if you would give me that explanation, I appreciate it.
Sure. The traffic engineer is the Public Works traffic engineer, so that's Devin Doyle today. And so he would review the waiver, and council members are notified when that waiver is requested. And you're given, the traffic engineer is given 15 business days to act on that.
So after I receive the report, a council member can object or question on that waiver. Is that correct?
Sure, that gives time for the council member to ask any questions about the proposal and work through that with Public Works and Planning.
Sounds great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Seeing no one else in the queue, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Still at 14? Oh, right. Next is BL 2017-734. Sponsor is Hastings, who has left, and we do not have a letter, so we will move that to the heel, just in case he comes back. Next is BL 2017-756. Sponsor is Scott Davis. Changes 0.2 acres from RS5 to RX6A zoning for property located at 2510 Trevecca. I expect he's out talking with the last person. We will move that to the heel. If someone can remind him he needs to come back, that might be good. Thank you. Next is BL 2017-757, sponsors Bedney. Amends 188.7 acres of the Evergreen Hills SP for properties located at 13,880 Old Hickory Boulevard and Old Hickory Boulevard unnumbered, approximately 2,250 feet east of Pettus Road to permit 634 residential units. Do I have a motion? Then moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2017-760, sponsor Scott Davis. Changes 0.19 acres from SP to R6A zoning for property located at 609 North 2nd Street. Do I have a motion? And seconded. Councilmember Bedney, do you want to speak on this one? Yes,
I had a question for Councilman Davis. Is there any land that is not rezoned in your district, or you rezone everything already?
Councilmember Davis, do you want to answer that?
Councilperson many years ago rezoned car lots, everything else to RS5 industrial, and so that's why. Move for approval.
Recovery. Thank you. Been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Should we look back and get that one or keep it in order? Okay, Mr. Davis, we're going to go back and get the other one. I know you need to talk to your constituent. We are backing up and considering RS 2017-756, changes 0.2 acres from RS5 to R6A, property located at 2510 Trevecca Avenue. Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Now we are on BL 2017-761, sponsors O'Connell, changes 0.8 acres from R6 to SP zoning for properties located at 400, 402, 404, 406, 408, and 408B Hume Street, and 1603A, 1603B, and 1603C 4th Avenue North to permit 18 residential units. Been moved and seconded. Seeing no discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2017-762. Sponsor is Roberts. I have a letter asking to defer one meeting. All right. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? Deferral is recommended. Next is BL 2017-763. Sponsor is Freeman. Changes 0.7 acres from R10 to CS zoning for property located at 981 Murfreesboro Pike. Been moved and seconded. Seeing no discussion. Oh, you wish to speak? Councilmember? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to let everybody know we may be deferring this for a small period of time, but I would move for approval at this time.
Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2017-764, sponsors Wiener and Rosenberg, changes 4.07 acres from R15 to SP zoning for property located at 730 Old Hickory Boulevard to permit up to 49 residential units. Do I have a motion? Been moved and seconded. Councilmember Wiener.
Thank you. I would just appreciate everyone's support. All the questions have been answered from all the neighbors. Everybody's fine, and this is very consistent with properties that are behind it and across the street from it. So I'd appreciate your support.
Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2017-765. Sponsor is Karen Johnson. She is in your office. I'm going to move it to the heel. Send her back. Okay. Next is BL 2017-766. Sponsor is Scott Davis. Changes 0.16 acres from RS5 to R6A zoning for property located at 1314 Joseph Avenue. Been moved and seconded. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2017-767. Sponsor is Roberts. Changes 1.25 acres from R6 and R8 to SP zoning for properties located at 6120, 6122, and 6124 Robertson Avenue and Robertson Avenue unnumbered to permit up to 15 multifamily dwelling units. Okay. I do have a letter. I'm changing the sponsor to Schulman. Roberts has recused herself on that one. There's a proposed substitute. You want to move the proposed substitute? Move the substitute. Okay. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor of the substitute? Any opposed? Substitute is recommended. All those in favor of the bill is substituted. Recommended as substituted. Next is BL 2017-768, sponsors Roten and Syracuse, changes 87.91 acres from RS15 to SP zoning for properties located at 3605 and 3739 Hoggett Ford Road and Hoggett Ford Road unnumbered to permit to 289 dwelling units. I understand there is a substitute. Councilmember Roten.
And I needed to ask Mike about this one. Mike, we've got a substitute, but with that said, there's a couple of technical issues that had to be changed, so we were going to be asking to suspend the rules tomorrow. So we're going to have a different substitute. Should they do the substitute now or just wait until tomorrow night?
So we're on the bill without the substitute. All right. All those in favor of the original bill? All right. Any opposed? Original bill is recommended. Next, Councilmember Bedney, sorry. Yes, sir.
I was wondering if you will please the chair to do a consent agenda and maybe pull the legislations that people want to discuss and then do a consent agenda with all the other ones.
Do we have that many left? I'll move fast, I promise. Because I know we're trying to get the Affordable Housing Committee meeting going. So next we're on BL 2017-769. Sponsor is Dowell. I do not have a letter, I don't think. We'll move that one to the Hill. Oh, wait, I do have something from Hastings. Okay. Let me check the number. I just saw a letter from Hastings. 734, I do have one, and 778. So when we get to 778, we'll go back and pick up 734 as well. Don't let me forget. Next is BL 2017-771. Sponsor is Elrod. 769 was Dowell. She's not here. I've moved her to the Hill. Okay. Then we'll defer. Next is BL 2017-771. Sponsors Elrod, changes 2.31 acres from OR 20 to SP zoning for property located at 326 Welch Road to permit up to 81 residential units. I have a letter from the sponsor to approve. Is there a motion? Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2017-772. Sponsor Syracuse. Applies 1.85 acres of a historic landmark overlay district for property located at 2250 Lebanon Pike. Do you have a motion? Been moved and seconded. Seeing no discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2017-773. Sponsor Syracuse applies 5.92 acres of a neighborhood landmark overlay district for properties located at 2250, 2254 and Lebanon Pike unnumbered, and Revere Place unnumbered at the corner of Biley Parkway Ramp and Lebanon Pike. Do you have a motion? It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2017-774. Sponsor Scott Davis. Changes 0.2 acres from RM20 to SP zoning for property located at 106 North 8th Street to permit up to 6 residential units. Do you have a motion? And second? I'll take that as a any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2017-775. Sponsor is Roberts. I have a letter from the sponsor to approve. Is there a motion? It's been moved and seconded vigorously. All those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2017-777. Sponsor is Scott Davis. Changes 0.3 acres from RS5 to SP zoning for property located at 1425 Stainback Avenue to permit an existing structure to be used as a detached accessory dwelling unit and to permit all other uses of the RS zoning district. Do you have a motion? It's been moved and seconded. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2017-778. Sponsor is Hastings. I do have a letter to approve, and I understand there's a proposed amendment. Do we know anything about the proposed amendment? Planning will tell me.
The amendment simply changed the fallback zoning to R6.
R6. Okay, thank you. Amendment's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? All right. All those on the bill as amended? Any opposed? Bill is recommended as amended. And we will go back to 734. I will read the caption as soon as I find it. BL 2017-734, sponsors Hastings, changes 3.92 acres from R8 to IWD zoning on property located at 2912 Brick Church Pike. Is there a motion? It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? Great. Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2017-779, as amended by Bedney. This changes 143.92 acres from AR2A to SP zoning for property located at Burkett Road, unnumbered, north of the terminus of Westcott Lane to permit a mixed-use development. Do I have a motion? It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none. Whoops. Councilmember Rena Johnson, is that on this one? Okay. You're recognized.
Thank you. I'll be quick. I think this bill and another Councilmember Bedner's bill is 634 units and 800 units. And I think those two are kind of sort of close proximity. And also those two bills ask for or demand school site dedication. So I would like to ask planning to how could MNPS or a council member can assure they will have great school siting for the future.
Well, the condition requires that they work with Metro Schools, and in that condition, if Metro Schools for some reason did not need a school site, then they could relieve them of that condition. But the way it's written, they have to sit down with Metro Schools and determine if they do have to dedicate one, they have to find a site either on this particular site or elsewhere in that area that's satisfactory to Metro Schools. So it has worked out. We've been including this condition since around 2004. So there have been several school sites that have been dedicated, and there's been other things that have been worked out with Metro Schools to satisfy the condition. So at this point, it's just a requirement that they sit down and meet with Metro Schools to satisfy the condition.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Glover.
So, Mr. Lehman, what's the relevance of that? Because help me understand, when was the last time the school board actually accepted a piece of property that was, I guess, due to this bill or however it works exactly? When did the school board actually take advantage of this?
There's been one near the old Starwood amphitheater. There was one out in that area.
Would that be Cane Ridge?
I don't remember the name of it. It's north, kind of west of the Starwood site, just west of Murfreesboro Pike. I know that there was one there. There's another one in Antioch. There was I can get you the list. I don't know all. I have a list at
it's relatively small. I think you're making the point. It's relatively small.
I have a list at my desk,
yeah.
but I don't have it with
and
me.
So I guess, you know, and I'm glad this was brought up because, frankly, you know, if we're going to do this, if we're going to make it a requirement, because I've had some developers in my area, and frankly, it's one of the things that drives me crazy on this, is because if you happen to be a developer that crosses that one home and you go into that realm and we say, oh, you've got to offer land for the schools, but if you're the developer and you're one below what the qualification has to be in order to offer it, you know, at some point, Chair, I would really like for us to have a conversation on how this works and what is actually equitable for all parties involved. So with my experience on the school board, it was rare. In fact, during my tenure, we never exercised that option. So that's why I was asking.
And I will say that we've been working much more closely with David Proffitt and the school board staff in the last couple of years, and I think that they're taking a sort of a harder look at these, and I think that you're going to see more of these required dedications in the future based on my conversations that we've had with David Proffitt. So I agree. I think there's probably not been as many in the past as that we could have had, but I think moving forward, I think you're going to see more of those. And we're working with them to sort of look at the requirements and how the numbers are derived for school site dedications. And so in the next few months, we'll be updating the calculations for how all the school site dedications are derived.
And I think, if I may, Chair, and I'll stop after this, I think when we have this conversation, we also have to have the conversation on how do we fund it? How do we pay for it? And so if we're gonna put this, I guess, the barrier on developers to give the land, we need to make sure, A, we can fund it, and B, when exactly are we going to fund it and build that school? So thank you for indulging me.
Thank you. So maybe when y'all finish doing that revision, we can have a special session to talk about. That'd be helpful. Good suggestion. Thank you. Several other council members in the queue. Councilmember Karen Johnson.
Thank you, Chair, for recognizing me, although I'm not on this committee, but I'm so glad that question was asked because I share the same concerns as Councilman Glover. Immediately, what came to mind was, and I would like planning to answer this question, are they required to update the council or just the school board? When that discussion takes place between the developer, because we out in Southeast Nashville are over capacity in every single school. This concerns me. And if there's a broken process still, we really need to have a serious conversation or it's going to continue to get worse in our area. So when you said that they, in this ordinance, that they are required to make contact with the school system, I'm assuming that is with Chris, who's over student assignments, and David Prophet? What is the process there? And are they required to just update the school board or the council as well?
Who we deal with is David Prophet. They may have an internal process that I'm not aware of who they have to talk to internally, but our main point of communication is David Prophet to let us know of what the school board is going to require prior to a final plat being recorded for one of these developments that has the condition in the council bill.
I just seriously think we need to have the planning committee of the council involved in that process. I think we always get that information too late on the back end. We're not on the front end of this, and that's the way that it's been for a while, and that has not worked. I know, because of sitting on the school board, how Chris does his work over in student assignments and how design and construction they go about with the school sightings, but there is a hole in that process that I think needs to be filled with the Metro Council. You know, if they're only obligated to discuss it and then the school system decides that they don't want the property for school or what have you, then we're not notified of that, but yet we've passed something in council thinking that that's going to take place. So I just see a disconnect there, Chair, and I think that needs to be brought to the table to discuss so that the council members on the planning committee can understand that process.
Thank you. Good suggestion.
Thank you.
We'll do that. Councilor Bedning.
Thank you, Chair. When I was the chair of education at last term, I was very frustrated. I don't know if you guys know this, but I designed the the JFK Middle School, Glenview Elementary. I was the project designer for some schools here in Nashville and outside around the state. One of the things I noticed is that there is a disconnect between the programming need for that school and this arbitrary number that we have in the zoning rules for how many acres are needed per school. So I was frustrated also about how the schools were being cited, and I called a meeting, and actually that policy that he was talking about was something that happened as a result of my request. So after that, planning and the school and the different agencies started talking to each other. Public Works, before they didn't do that as much. So the next step, and this is something that Doug Sloan and Mike Jameson and I have met to discuss, is how we can improve the siting process of new schools. We have a city that is very diverse. Depending on what part of the city you are, there are different problems in terms of siting. In the southeast, like Council Lady Johnson was saying, we have an issue where a school will be sited when a developer is asked for a huge amount of acres. They'll go and find this site in the middle of nowhere without any infrastructure, really bad roads, and they'll buy that land and they propose that land to the school system. And that meets the letter of the legislation, but it really doesn't work for the people that live around that site or for the people that go to that school. We really want to have community schools where, sorry for the long explanation, all that to say, I hope you guys will engage with us in trying to come up with a better way to fine-tune this legislation and have a better school siting legislation that encourages developers to build these schools closer to where people are in a way that they become community schools where kids can actually walk to school instead of having to get on a car and create all this traffic in the middle of really backed up roads in Southeast Nashville and other parts of the city. So I'm encouraged about this conversation. This is something that's been a passion of mine for many years, and I hope we can finally take care of it because it's kind of backwards right now. And going to what Councilmember Glover was saying, it's not that we are forcing developers to do this. If we don't do this, people won't support these new developments. People, the first thing they ask when a rezoning comes forward is, what are you doing about the roads? What are you doing about the schools? So if we don't show them that we are really having a deliberate, intentional effort to build these schools, they're not going to support this rezoning. So that's why I think we have to do it, but we have to do it right. Thank you. And please vote for this legislation, which is mine, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Spot Davis, do you want to go on this one?
I'm in full support, and thank you, Madam Chair, for letting me speak. I'm going to have a similar discussion on a planning approved bill for my district that activates this provision.
He has thousands approved.
Yeah, thousands. All right. Now, this is, and when I saw this requirement in there, there's a school less than 3 blocks from this site. And I'm thinking, as much as we all want to help the schools, you know, if we could use that provision to help the schools nearby, because unlike my brothers and sisters in other parts of the county, the schools nearby this site need more kids, you know. And so if there was a way that we can, instead of giving this school land, you know, or giving land to school, maybe we could require them to fix the track at Maplewood High School, which they need a new track. And then we don't have to use taxpayers' money to fix it, or make them, you know, and this is ideas, I don't know if we can do it, make them like Tom Joy Elementary is right around the block from this development in my district. Make them do sidewalks, or make them say, hey, I don't even mind if we could do that. I know Karen needs sidewalks at a couple of schools in her district, you know, and I think she got some of them in the budget, I'm not sure, but I wouldn't care if they gave $300 grand to the sidewalk fund for metro schools in general, you know, and just maybe other ways, because part of me, yes, I'm for it, but then I can't tell the school board how to spend their money or what to do with this. So I'd rather help the school in our way, you know, if we could do some sidewalks and we could say, hey, Maplewood, this developer's going to give you $400,000 to fix your track because you have a award-winning track team, but your track's messed up. And then I don't have to get beat up by Mr. Glover for trying to spend more money in the budget. So that's a way I'm going to ask to look at it with this development coming up, Mr. Lehman, or if there's a way for me to do it that way instead of them trying to find a piece of land
and
to buy the school.
Carrie Logan is looking into this, and unfortunately she's not here today, but there are some legal parameters that we have to work within. There's state law, and I'm no expert on that, but they have limitations in terms of what can be done and what's considered an impact fee. And there are some things that we can do, but there are some limitations too based on that state law. And I'll have to get more information on that, but that's what we are looking at going forward on making sure that whatever we do require is within the parameters of what we're allowed to do legally.
Thank you. That'll be a good info session. Seeing no one else in the queue, I think everyone's, are you up again? Councilmember Glover.
Yeah, I want to be very clear. I think we need to be very cautious the amount of expenses, with all due respect, Councilman, the amount of expenses we put on developers, because if we make Nashville unaffordable, then they won't try to develop here. So I'm looking at, and Mr. Lehman, I appreciate what you just said there. We have to be cautious of the impact fees, and we don't cross the lines on breaking what state laws are, et cetera. But I also want to be very realistic on what are the costs for developers and how do we help them develop, because that's what they do. And I think our city has prospered quite nicely over the last few years from the amount of development that's taken place. So I just want to, I don't want to be throwing things out there saying you got to give more money, because I think we've already put enough parameters on them to make it tough to develop. Thank you.
You're welcome. Seeing no one else in the queue, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2017-780, sponsor is Withers, changes 0.6 acres from CN and R6 to SP zoning for properties located at 1401 and 1405 Holly Street to permit an addition to the existing daycare. Do you have a motion? Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2017-781. Sponsor is Scott Davis, changes 18.74 acres from RS5 to RM20A for properties located at Penning Avenue unnumbered, Public Street unnumbered, Lucille Street unnumbered, and a portion of Dickerson Pike unnumbered, and by changing 1.89 acres from CS and RS5 to MUGA for properties located at 1412 Dickerson Pike and on a portion of 2 parcels along Dickerson Pike unnumbered, west of the terminus of Fern Avenue. Do I have a motion? It's been moved and seconded. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Bill, any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2017-732, sponsors Roberts. Changes 2.64 acres from CS and R6 to RM15 zoning for property located at 622 Crowley Drive. This was disapproved by the Planning Commission. I guess we have the slides when it comes before council. Okay, there is a letter to approve with a proposed substitute. Can someone from planning tell us about the substitute?
The substitute changes the base zoning from an RM15 to an RM15A or alternative to provide some design standards in the council bill.
Thank you. So we've heard the substitute. Councilmember Freeman, you want to speak on this? Thank you.
Without the council member here, can somebody give us why planning was so against this?
Sure. The Planning Commission recommended disapproval based on the fact that the property requested for rezoning has two separate land use policies covering the property. A portion of it's neighborhood center and a portion of it is neighborhood maintenance. Additionally, that it has double frontage and that it has frontages on two separate streets. And so there was concern from the Planning Commission in that access needed to be coordinated across the site, and also that that a design-based zoning would be more appropriate in that we could look at transitions from the existing surrounding development into this development, and so that the proposed zoning would not achieve the goals of the policy to provide that coordinated development.
Do we think that the substitute will take care of those design elements that you just spoke of?
Not entirely. The RM15A would not require it to look at access from the two frontages of that are on the property. So there are two public street frontages, and so the RM15A would not require that it look at coordinated access or transitions to the existing land uses.
So the substitute's just for?
So the A districts or the alternative districts. The A districts or the alternative districts have some standards in regards to requiring a build-to zone along public street frontages. If it's in the UZO or not in the UZO, those can vary. If it's outside of the UZO, it can allow for one row or one module of parking in the front. And so it does provide for a little bit more of a pedestrian-oriented type of design in that it pulls buildings up closer to the street and has some minimum design standards for those street frontages.
Thank you. Councilmember O'Connell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it would honestly be helpful for the sponsoring member to be present for this committee for a unanimously disapproved bill, even though we do have a letter to approve. Obviously, we can take this up in front of the whole body. I think there's a part of me that thinks it might make more sense to defer, although I guess I will leave that decision up to the council when this does come before the body as a whole. I think it's tough to support with so little information about why we didn't look at ways to address that policy discrepancy there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Scott Davis.
Forgive me, Madam Chair. This is Councilor Roberts' bill, correct?
Correct.
And if I'm mistaken, is this dealing with a trailer park, correct?
It is a trailer park. That is correct.
That's in the middle of the nations. Is that correct?
I can't
Or
answer.
I'm thinking it's Charlotte Park.
It's in District 20. It's in Council Lady Roberts' district. I don't know that I would say it's actually geographically in the nations, but nearby, yes.
Nearby. All right. Dealing with having trailer parks myself in the middle of weird areas, where you wouldn't think it's there. She had a lot of community input and meetings about this. And even though she's not here, I would like to discourage the committee, even though I'm not on it, not to defer this, but let it pass. I'm sure Councilor Roberts, if you have questions, she will answer, or she may even defer herself tomorrow night, because, dealing with a trailer park, I believe she had community support to do something with it. Sometimes it's a very difficult situation, so I would like for the committee to be sympathetic and wait for her to make a decision to defer or not. I'm sure that she would request, she's sent a letter asking for it to be passed, correct?
Yes, she has a letter asking for approval.
Yes, and I know she had a lot of meetings, and it was trailer parks are very tricky, when dealing with evolving or maintenance or whatnot, because, we don't zone for trailer parks anymore. But You know, I'm sorry, Bob, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to point out that there's about 15, in the existing uses that are there, there's about 15 trailer park units there, and under this proposed zoning, it would allow about 39 multifamily units. And so it's an increase over what's there today, having 39 units. And the concern of the Planning Commission was that with two different policy areas, that those 39 units are appropriately placed so that they're not going to be inconsistent with the character of the neighborhood around it. So it is a pretty good increase in density from what's there today.
Councilmember Mina Johnson.
Thank you. Yes, again, this is a disapproval bill. However, knowing in that area, and it would be ideal if the sponsor of the bill is here and if she could explain the reason behind this zoning instead of SP. Yes, of course, design standards point, SP will be more appropriate, but knowing in that area with existing trailer mobile park, and even though it will potentially increase maximum density, is currently allowed 20 units to 39 units, so 19 units more. Seems like knowing how she works for zone change, I think I could support this one, despite of disapproval from the planning.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? I think we need a show of hands. All those in favor, raise your hand nice and high. Thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, is what I count. Opposed? There we go, 1, 2. Councilmember Bednay, do you wish to vote on this? This is the trailer park in Councilmember Roberts' district. We'll put you down as not voting. All right, 8-3. Not everybody. Anybody abstaining deliberately? Okay, one not voting. Next is BL 2017-783. Sponsor is Van Rees. Changes 0.96 acres from RS20 to SPR zoning for property located at 630 Old Hickory Boulevard to permit up to 13 residential units. I have a letter from the sponsor to approve. Do I have a motion? It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Next is BL 2017-785. Sponsors Kendall and Roberts. Hold on. I do not have a letter on this particular bill, so we'll move it here and probably defer by rule. We're close. Next is BL 2017-786. Sponsor is Scott Davis. Changes 3.79 acres from RS5 to SP zoning for properties located at 528, 532, 536, and 540 Edwin Street to permit up to 32 residential units. Do I have a motion? Been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. All right, we will see what's left on the heel. I think it may just be that one. Let's see, Scott Davis, we came back and did that one. Right, Councilmember Johnson, yes, thank you for coming back. Next is BL 2017-765. Sponsors Karen Johnson. Changes 1.23 acres from AR2A to SP zoning for property located at 3413 Old Anderson Road to permit 9 residential units. Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is recommended. And Councilmember Dowell, did we ever hear from her? Okay, we will defer by rule. That's my action. This is BL 2017-769. Sponsors Dowell changes 19.27 acres from RM20 to SP zoning for property located at Old Hickory Hollow Parkway to permit 350 units and applies design standards. We are deferring by rule. Done. Next is BL 2017-7, where'd it go? 785, we are deferring by rule. Any other business to come before the committee? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Stick around for affordable housing, please.
I have two